The tale kicks off inside a cathedral where Eros, our main guy, rips open a brand new power, the ability to act like a cheat code operator. From that day on, Eros got thrown out of his parents' home, because nobody could explain what that power even was, and everyone just kept judging it as if it were some kind of awkward mess. Everyone thinks this power should be for anyone, and it comes in big names. People can become holy swordsmen, and the smartest can even earn the title of intelligent man. Today, Eros, yeah, that's him, was celebrating his 18th birthday, and the moment finally arrived when Leon, his friend with the world's highest abilities, told Eros, "Don't worry." Right then, his father stepped in and told him his skills could soar. After all, the Eros family has carried the Holy Swordsman title for generations, and because of what they're capable of, they've been chosen as the escorts of reality for as long as anyone can remember. And that's why Eros got hit with that special restricted training. No question he'd unlock an insanely powerful ability, because his father chose to put it in his hands, and now Eros started to think. Everybody expected Eros to be holy, and when his son finally showed up, they all gasped, because people swore his power could skyrocket even higher, and that's exactly why everyone was freaking out right then, wondering just how insanely strong Leon's son was going to be. But then Leon snaps into worry, fretting over what that ability even is and grilling Eros about activating the will. So when Eros tries, he finds only a screen in front of him, and it tells him it can boost his power, which was tiny. He blurts to his father, "Is everything okay?" While the crowd whispers that the Holy Swordsman's son is really starting to unleash a horrifying new power, and he can't stop himself from demanding, so what exactly is it? Obviously, Eros had no clue what was going on, he just kept pushing to become holy, even though it was only supposed to last until the day before. There was even a day when Eros wanted to quit, but he clenched his teeth and went on, chasing that bright future he promised himself hard work would build. Still, all those brutal, painful days ended up meaning nothing for Eros. Right then, the man barked that the people behind were already waiting, so he demanded he make room for everyone else. Then comes the next kid, boom, he's the one who claims the holy sword. Eros snaps with irritation, baffled by what's going on, while everyone finally realizes the silver holy sword isn't just stronger, it's different, and the crowd keeps asking how far that kid can possibly go. Sure, the kid has no clue why he got the sword, but the man steps in and says the Lord must have guided him there. So yeah, a bright future is waiting. Eros tells himself, don't let it get under your skin. But the second he tries to explain to his father that this guy was the next holy of the sword, his father launches into a stunned speech about how being the silver holy sword was beyond any ability, so far above his own it could even eclipse him. Then the stranger asks for the child's name, Dudley, and right after that, Eros' father casually invites Dudley to live with him, and Eros is left completely clueless about what's happening. Until his father suddenly whirled toward Eros and demanded, "What are you still doing here?" He ordered all the illegitimate abilities to get out, because then, with everything hanging in the air, Eros' father finally blurted, "You were never my son." Eros shot back, "What are you talking about?" And right then, his father changed everything, declaring that from this moment on, he'd be Dudley's practice partner and also his son and his servant. But if Eros didn't trust him, then get out immediately. Previously, Eros was ripped out of his family and kicked out for good. And with a heavy heart, he stormed out of the mansion, bidding goodbye to his mother and his father, who he can't even bring himself to see. After all that, he didn't just live a different life, everything flipped. He'd grown up as the son of the Enchanted Swords family, but when the 7 lights of their relatives vanished one after another, the Holy Swordsman's son revealed an ability the family had never had. The word spread fast, and with nowhere left to belong, Eros made his move, heading straight for the next town. While all that chaos brewed, Eros suddenly finds himself surrounded by wolves, and he realizes something seriously off. He's standing in the middle of a wide avenue with wolf after wolf closing in. Until he whips his head around, someone's screaming, and he bolts over to see what in the world is going on. A bear was seconds from tearing into a princess, when a brave arrow slinger burst into action and sprinted for help. And she snaps back that it won't work. Then right when Eros is forced to let go of the info, a screen flashes across his face. His ability level just jumped from winning the battle, and now a cheat code has unlocked, letting him unleash every fire attribute he can right then and there. Eros didn't get what was happening at first, but the moment he realized he could use magic, he figured it out fast, and then he went for it, unleashing a fire spear that obliterated the bear for good. Eros starts to panic, locked in place, totally freaking out about what in the world is happening. He finally grasped a magic he'd never even touched before, and somehow it felt like it appeared out of nowhere, like a mystery he couldn't explain. Then it clicked. The cheat code operator power was basically the key that let him wield magic, and the whole thing sounded insane. If they wanted more attack power, shouldn't there be an ability called Increase Attack Power? But nobody had ever heard of this cheat code operator, so the princess pressed him and demanded to know what that power even was. And when Eros tells her it's been a while since they lived, the princess hates the stiff formality. So she snaps that she wants him to call her by her name because those honorifics were banned, just like they were for the second princess he's talking about. And when he finally realizes everything will be okay, the truth hits him. Eros' family has served as the royal family's personal escort for generations. That's exactly how he ended up crossing paths with the second princess, right back when his father, still holy of the sword, was with him. Eros strikes up a conversation with her the moment she reaches the age where she's expected to request her marriage. He tries to focus, but even as time drags on, he slips, forgetting a little of what's going on around him, wondering if his thoughts have been looping like this the whole time. Soon, Eros leans in and blurts that he's got something to tell the princess, then asks if she's actually listening. But he's not the holy of the sword, and the whole situation is way more twisted than anyone expected. He tore himself away from his family, severed any ties to the royal court, because he failed to earn the ability, and now the princess shrugs it off like, "It's fine, you don't get to be forgiven since you never had the talent for that." And he's convinced the whole kingdom's rotten to the core, which is why the princess is being sent on a trip with Eros. Once he gets it, Eros immediately warns that he'll probably get arrested for kidnapping the royal princess. "So I need to find someone to write that letter to the family, and then none of us has to stress," except Eros steps in and snaps, "Relax, it's no problem." And then he demands to know why that princess was even tailing him in the first place. She just can't stand being away from him, so she blurts out, "Was that really good?" Eros tells her it's fine, and for a bit she can stay right by his side. Then she has to improvise mid-battle, pulling out her holy mage magic to call on help the moment things go bad, and right as that happens, he spots a stone glowing in the bear and decides to grab it right away because he has to find out what it really is. Soon he starts wondering what would happen if he sold it in the nearby villages, but nobody even knows what it is. And at the start of their talk, the princess is revealed as the king's illegitimate daughter, born from a woman who'd come all the way from a distant village. With her win rate on the throne, things didn't look that easy, because the king still adored the princess's mother, and that made it smart for her to move into the royal castle ASAP. So Eros listened as the princess to be gushed. "The village is lovely, the rice is amazing, and the air is so clean, a perfect start." Then Eros decides to scout things before trouble erupts, even if it means they might circle back to the royal capital to grab a carriage. When he finally stumbled into that place, the crowd swarmed around him, clueless. Then the arrows started flying past them, and every single person's eyes locked on him as they shouted that he'd become the family's failure and got thrown out of his own home. Soon he demands the princess stay close, then right when it matters, someone grabs Eros' attention. They got right in his face asking, "Were you talking to me?" And these three hard-looking adventurers immediately demanded help from Eros, insisting he give them a good place as a proper citizen. And if he still didn't get it, they'd keep paving the way for society, better than Eros ever could, so yeah, he needs to get out. Soon, a woman storms in, saying everyone's behavior was awful and that nobody ever answered an urgent request. Then she demands they all return to the lowest strength level. The adventurers snap, saying they'll kill her as arrows are already needed to help. So he finally taps into his cheat ability and burns a slice of his attack power. So he slams them all back, flinging them as far as they can go, and the poor guy is left staring in terror, wondering how something like that even happened. He took one brutal hit, dropped hard to the ground, but he's still breathing and joy bursts through him because he's alive. But before long he blurts out, "Eros, what are you even doing?" And Eros smirks, admitting he didn't mean anything by it, he just hit him with a basic ability. The adventurers sprint off, swearing they'll remember it, while the princess murmurs that maybe Eros is even stronger than his own father. Yet Eros never truly laid eyes on his father. But now he's convinced his own power can't possibly outmatch the Holy of the Sword. Yet that creepy cheat code operator ability might be even more terrifying than anyone ever imagined. An Eros screen lights up with new info. His power jumps higher after the win, and now he can read the physical strength of whoever he's facing. Sure, it might open the door to even more abilities, but chasing that kind of power is insanely dangerous. Basically, he can only use powers that humans can actually pull off. And the wild part is, some people have heard rumors that their abilities can multiply. So what should have been a tiny number became insanely rare and incredibly useful. Enough that the kingdom would grab someone like that for the most important positions. Right now, Eros has 3 abilities. So yeah, he should probably lay low until someone learns just how dangerous he really is. The princess blurts, "Why did you go quiet so fast? Are you okay?" Eros snaps, "It's nothing," and the princess tells him not to worry anymore. Dudley doesn't have the best reputation for an orphan, but the Holy Sword doesn't need that kind of fear. He may look strong, yet his real power is his personality. Eros can't help it. She bursts out asking why Dudley feels so insanely familiar to her. She lashes out and smacks him right across the face, sticking out her tongue like a taunt. But when it comes to Eros, she can't get a single word out. So it all goes down inside the grand mansion of Eros's family. Dudley stood there barking orders for everyone to clean up every mess, and he couldn't shake the question. How long would he have to wait before he took over as the successor of the Holy Sword? If she's got time to grab her stuff, then she's got time to set all of that up too. The maid's eyes were glassy with tears as she whispered, "Why is Dudley doing all this evil?" While she compared him to Eros, who was far kinder, far calmer, and somehow stayed warm when everything else turned cold. That day, the maid couldn't even find the words to tell Eros anything. She just drowned in the same heartbreak as he did. And ever since then, the sadness the master of abilities poured into him has been spreading. They're determined to reach Eros and stay by his side as fast as they can. But it's not over yet. She has to find Eros again, because that's the only way she can push forward. Eros can't shake the feeling that they never matched his personality. Then, just as his own power ran out, orphans swooped in and snatched the moment away, because their abilities kept insisting they wanted something else and those wishes never landed. Talk about irony. The power they wanted ended up showing up as what Eros was given. And for a kid to have that kind of high-level trash power feels natural for the kind of personality they're chasing. Still, Eros shoots his father a question, acting clueless while staring straight at the truth he's pretending not to see. The princess snaps that she can't stand it. Now Eros is meant to obey her every time she calls, but that's impossible, and nobody has a clue who will be picked to escort her. The princess declares, "I don't care if he's got some weird ability out of the family or not. As long as I'm with him, we're fine." Then she leans in and adds, "Keep it quiet, there's an adventure guild near our village and nobody needs to know, not unless it's just a small one." What? She dreamed of running wild as an adventurer with Eros, but the truth hit hard. She's from the village and they'll sniff out she's royalty. Still, maybe she can slip in under a fake name and pull it off. And right there with the guildmaster standing with them, everyone burst with excitement, imagining an adventure life together with Eros. But the carriage suddenly jostles and the princess gets flung onto him. Then the scent of roasted meats hits and it knocks the strength right out of her. She blurts an apology, insisting she never wanted things to end up like that. Then she forces the truth out. Eros can strike anytime, so even now we'll still need to take Eros. Eros blurts, "Wait, aren't you a higher class monster?" While the friends keep battling, even though the fight is spiraling fast, and that's exactly why he's trying to buy time and make their travels hit even harder. Because right now this is all for the common people, we should go back, Eros insists, then adds, "It's fine, I'll help somehow." What? The adventurers start staring like, what on earth could show up next? And Eros says, "Nope, I'm not some holy swordsman, I've still got rigorous training so I can be your support for now." The adventurers nod and agree, but Eros warned. If things get too dangerous, he needs to bail immediately. Eros clocks what's happening, and the third ability, peeking at the target's raw physical strength, hits him as the perfect chance to put his power to the test. As soon as they start marching toward the battle, they spot the aftermath, people crumpled and hurt, doctors swamped with non-stop injuries. The adventurers rolling in, same rank as the ones who'd been tagging along with Eros. And when the front lines finally get their high-class reinforcements, one thing becomes clear. They're not going to win. Only Eros's true ally could stay calm right then. Because for the first time, this high-class battle had dwindled to just 3, and facing that giant monster was totally different. They'd never seen something that massive, not in a way that let their courage hold, not even for a second. So now, with the fight already dragging on for a while, it felt like the only thing left was to step in and finish it, because it was basically over. The Star Adventurers lay sprawled across the ground, all of them down. They couldn't pull it off because the 3 high-class adventurers were standing in the way. And this wasn't some joke, and they still couldn't wrap their heads around how that battle was even possible. A colossal monster slammed into one of the adventurers and started twisting him like a nightmare clawing at its prey. It felt like something ripped through him like cloth, splitting him clean in two. Then the protagonist panicked, and they bolted straight to the guild to report it. Eros ends up gripping his sword and blurts that the adventurer can't survive this alone. This is the only route, and if he has to, he'll die right here, which leaves him staring at the question of just how far that cheat code operator can push him. The adventurers refuse to let death claim them. One of the girls tries to push herself up, but the giant monster spots it and lunges, finally going for the adventure for real, and Eros rips the power boost on, cranking his attack higher. And just like that, he finally smashes the giant monster right in the face. It slammed itself down hard, right onto the ground, fully committed to the impact. As the 2 adventurers finally collide, Eros spots himself, and they both stare down at the girl crumpled on the ground. He decided to run a potion tour with 1 attack only. Eros pulled off the impossible, and it's making it look like his power might be enough after all. So when the girl finally wakes up, they rush to ask if she's in pain. She says no. And right after that, the giant hauls himself up and gets more and more pissed. Eros suddenly realizes what's happening, so he calls on the other adventurers to help him take down that monster. Because even if they're strong, the only way forward is to bring that sword down and refuse to quit. Soon he begs for whoever can help him, and right there they fire back. "Tell us the name of that brave swordsman, Eros." He finally blurts out his name, and the whole family's too, and that's when she starts piecing together exactly who he is. After the girl tells him her name, everyone shuts their mouths tight about him, because Eros is a legend-level swordsman. Then the monster lurches straight toward Eros, and Eros just digs in and waits for the right moment to strike back, because that pressure in his chest is downright insane. Right after that, he skids to a stop, checks his 3 powers, and then slams the strength visualization button. He finds himself staring at a bar full of tiny bars he can't figure out, then he blurts out, "So will I get to visualize the power too? And when I look, will I also see how much damage I just dealt that giant?" And that's what Eros demanded to prove. He smashed his way across the giant's body, and already several brutal spots were wrecked to pieces. So he figured the others might still be calm, but that hope was already crushed because the fight had taken so much damage. Eros thought he could push the others to be okay, but the damage was piling up fast. Then he hesitated, thinking he'd try tightening his legs a bit more until it hit him. If that giant lands an attack on him, there's no way he survives. Eros slips out of the way on instinct and swings back immediately, because he can feel the opening and knows he's got a real shot. So he hurls himself back into action, right in the way his family always did. Next, he reveals the first secret technique, and then charges in with everything he's got to swing the Phoenix Sword, and unleashing a monstrous power surge as soon as that giant was fully triggered. And in the end, he unleashes every last firepower he's got, one attribute after another, to cram all that power into a single magic. So he rockets over to the others, shouting for all of them to flee right now. So they turn and ask, "Why are we running right now? The giant's already gone, and that makes no sense. There's no way it could be finished like that, no way it could bounce back. It looks like everyone's been pounding it so hard that it was barely clinging to life anyway, and Eros just squeezed out its final hit." But don't think Eros attacked with some magic spell, real talk. The fact everyone's even fighting it without wiping out has to be because it is that simple for normal people, unless you're an insanely experienced adventurer. He insists it's all in their heads, calls the whole thing a lie, and then he storms over to grab another one of those stones. It was more of that same stuff coursing through the bear's body. But that night, Eros suddenly comes back. Then the princess leaps onto him, and he immediately starts grilling her on what was going on. She was buzzing with relief that Eros was okay, but her worry still gnawed at her. What if something had happened? In the end, Eros thanks, and hands her a bouquet of flowers like a romantic grand entrance. Saying it was the only thing he could salvage, she reaches out and takes the flowers, saying it's fine really. So they burst into the village right there at last. That village was so quiet it felt like a whole new world, nothing like the chaos of the capital, and honestly it felt refreshing. After all this time, it was their chance to pick up the adventures and go again the very next day. The adventurer beside him blurts out that she wants Eros to give her sword-fighting lessons because his skills are already impressive, but Eros knows the truth. Compared to his father, he's still got a mountain to climb. But the princess shuts him down. Starting today, he'll take orders straight from her. He stammers, "What kind of orders?" The adventurer snaps that the princess should show more respect for her role. Then she quickly shifts Eros' focus away. He'll admit he never reached the level of a true master swordsman, but that battle still throws him into one brutal, soul-shaking fight that tests everything. She's convinced he's the swordsman this new era demands. Both she and the princess believe it, and she's placing Dudley Eros far above the rest, because compared to him, Dudley is way more honorable. He bursts into laughter, swears that might be an exaggeration. Yet he's genuinely happy because his father chose Dudley, and it all feels like he's standing beside the silver swordsman. Not even his own son. Nobody should have been facing that mess at that moment. And before long, those mounting questions just kept swirling, with no one really able to pin down what was going on. After the princess finishes her bath, Eros is out cold, and she leans in asking if he was really listening. Eros leans in and asks if she's really wearing nothing but a towel, then she fires back asking what the big deal is. He snaps, "Yes, there's a problem," and lays it out. He was a kid booted from his own family, but she's royal, and if she slips up, it could wreck her entire future. But she doesn't care, she just wants them to get back to the time they were in before. So she flops onto the bed, smiles, and says goodnight, right before the room goes quiet. But the arrows couldn't rest, not for a second. So after going toe-to-toe with that giant, he forces himself to his feet, because the fight just unlocked brand new abilities. It hit totally different from what he'd tried before. Now he could crank up the power and vulnerability of every target, and he couldn't resist, so he slammed the cheat code to activate it. But the moment it happened, his head started to throb with pain, and his vision turned utterly unbearable. Eros stares around in shock, because somehow he woke up in a total mystery place he's never seen before. He decides to check, had he already met the person who was nearby back then. They didn't even notice Eros standing there, and the man goes, "Man, you'd think they've got endless energy today." Then the guy frowns and asks, "Or am I hallucinating?" Soon the truth hits him. The first king is the one who started it all, and the Majesty's son has already ditched every public duty. But he hates all that ceremony, and somehow he's still wearing the crown. Soon they decide to grab a drink, but the son refuses to cooperate. Too late, too early, it's all wrong. Then Eros finally clicks. That man wasn't just anyone. He was the strongest swordsman of all time, the one who came after the first king, the very predecessor of Eros. Soon the predecessor leans in and demands, so what's the plan for the next phase of development? The king exhales, admits the whole situation is a tangled mess, and starts weighing who should train the next generation, because that reincarnation spell is still pressing heavily on them. So yeah, they have to trust that person to choose who gets in. Because if the wrong person barges through, the whole world crumbles, and that person will hand the power to someone who actually deserves it. And everyone was nodding along, then the protagonist got hit with a paralyzing curse. And the arrows just stood there, utterly clueless about what to do next. Still, he pushed through and nailed the legendary swordsman's mission, but the whole time his mind wouldn't stop racing at what he'd just seen. So he confirmed the next mission. It turns out she was the very origin, the spark that birthed the strongest school of his family's style. Then Arrows starts training, until he slices through an entire tree like it's nothing. And he can't believe what he just witnessed. Eros swore his sword was the real deal. People said that legendary school was the only way to reach the peak of swordsmanship. And now everyone was pushing Eros to pass every ounce of power to the next generation, so yeah, maybe they picked Eros as the successor. But Ero bursts into laughter, his brains completely scrambled, and then he decides to finally crash into sleep. Meanwhile, inside Eros' house, someone was pushing the question, should they really throw everything away? But it was his father grilling someone over what Dudley had done, while every maid started slipping out of the room. And that's when the industry began ramping up under his father's watch. Right then, he was the lifeline keeping the family tethered to reality. But now they'd have to face that fallout too, and moments later, Leon is suddenly called to attention. Dudley leans in and demands the name of his biological son. After he blurts out it was Eros, the boy shrugs it off and says, "It's fine," then admits something happened and swears he'll never ever forget that moment. Dudley tells them Mary, the woman working there, is leaving because of Eros, though he may be stronger, and then they snap, asking where Eros is right this second. Meanwhile, Eros got slammed into a messy situation. One second he's fine, the next the princess is dumped into his arms, and she falls asleep inside her dream. Eros came in 3 different versions. Then right on cue, someone shows up and jolts them back to reality, only for the woman to apologize for barging in, and they instantly choose to walk away. Because right then, boom, it was time to register as adventurers first. The girl leans in and asks Eros if he can start treating her a lot more casually. They're adventurers, sure, but all that stiff formality was messing with his head until it was just them in private. Pretty soon, she waves it off like, it's fine, then demands he call her his wife. Eros hears it and wastes no time. Once the story kicks off, he's starting the journey. It all kicks off in a cathedral, when Eros, our hero, suddenly grabs the power of a cheat code operator. And from that day on, Eros was never the same as the story starts to spiral. Exiled from his parents' home, Eros starts the wild ride in a cathedral, where he suddenly gains the power of a cheat code operator. In a towering cathedral, Eros, our protagonist, unlocks a cheat code-like power that kicks the story into motion. It all kicks off inside a cathedral where Eros, yes, that Eros, snatches the power of a cheat code operator. From that day on, the tale kicks off in a cathedral. Eros shows up and gains the power of a cheat code operator. And then boom, he's thrown out of his own parents' home because nobody can explain what he's doing, and it's pretty damn inelegant. That ability is the kind everyone should have earned. The chance to wield holy swords, to grasp the power that lets you hold the title of Holy Swordsman, and only those intelligent men get called by that name. Also earned the intelligent title, so Eros, the protagonist, was busy celebrating his 18th birthday today, and that. And then the day finally crashed in, when Leon, his friend with the biggest abilities in the whole world, grabbed Eros and told him, "Don't worry." Right there, his father stepped in too, promising that his power could soar even higher because Eros's family has carried the title of Holy Swordsman for generations. And that family was handed the job of escorting reality for as long as it took, for an endless stretch of time due to. So it all came down to his power, and that's why Eros got special restricted training, because everyone knew he could forge an insanely strong ability. And since his father pushed him into that path, Eros started feeling the pressure. People weren't just watching him, they were expecting him to become holy. And when his son arrived, their power shot even higher, and that was exactly the kind of boost everyone could use. Leon felt his nerves spike. Sure, Leon's son's strength would be insane. Then Leon's expression snapped to worry, and he started asking himself what on earth was going to happen next. Seriously, what kind of power is that? He demanded. Then he snapped that Eros should activate the will. But the moment Eros tried, he froze because all he could see in front of him was a screen. He warns that it could jack up the attack power, though his power is still tiny, and then he turns to his father asking if everything's fine, sure, but people are freaking out about the Holy Swordsman's son and this terrifying new ability, and they keep demanding to know what's going on while Eros has absolutely no clue. He's just focused on sharpening himself, trying to keep up with whatever powers he's supposed to unlock, pushing toward a better tomorrow, right up until the day he almost wanted to quit. He didn't though. He kept going, driven by the belief that hard work will pay off. All that effort, all those brutal days, they didn't mean a thing, and it finally broke Eros. Soon the man snapped that the next people were already in line, demanded he make room for them, and then the very next child stepped up. Whoever it was, snatched the holy sword arrows and became utterly unstoppable. Irritated, he couldn't stop wondering what that meant. Was happening, and people finally realized exactly what he was doing. The silver holy sword wasn't just holy. He was on a whole different level, and everyone keeps wondering how insanely cool the rest of it is. Cool, he can descend that easily, but the kid has no clue why he's suddenly wielding the holy sword. Then the man leans in and explains it. The Lord must have taken the same path to reach the sword. And they'd chase a bright future like it's right within reach. Iris pauses and tries to talk himself out of it, because he can't stop the thought from creeping in, consider him. He tries not to get irritated, but the moment he starts telling his father stared at him and declared that man was the next holy sword. His father starts bragging that being the silver holy sword was unreal, so far beyond anyone's skill it could even top Eros' own father. Then he suddenly turns and asks, "What's your name?" And the kid answers, "Dudley." Right after that, Eros' father drops a bombshell. He tells Dudley to move in with him, and Eros is completely clueless until his father finally whips around and asks Eros why he's still hanging around. Eros's father finally blurts out that he's not her real dad, right after insisting the kid is his and that he should leave. From the start, Eros' father starts it all. Eros blurts out what he's even talking about. Then from this moment on, Eros' father becomes Dudley's practice partner, treats him like a son and a servant, and warns him. If he can't trust that, he better leave at once. Immediately, Eros was kicked out of his own family, so he stormed out of the mansion, told his mother goodbye, and said farewell to his father, whom he couldn't even face. And just like that, a whole new life began for him. For now, he lived as the blessed heir of the Enchanted Swords family. And then everything changed because now. And just like that, 7 lights from their relatives blinked out one by one, leaving the son of the whole. The holy swordsmen didn't just wield blades, they discovered powers that didn't belong to any family. The news tore through town fast, and Eros had nowhere to land. So he set out for the next town, only to get tangled up with a pack of wolves in the meantime. And when Eros looks around, he realizes things are strange. He was standing right in the middle of the avenue. And as the wolves closed in, he snapped his head back to a scream, then bolted toward the noise to see what the heck was going on. A massive bear was closing in on a princess, and one wrong move would trigger the attack. Eros finally breaks into a run for help, but Eros gets told, that won't work, just when she was already starting to fall apart and was about to give up. An info screen suddenly blazed into view in front of him. His face said it all, he'd just won, and that victory supercharged his ability level. Right in the middle of the battle, the cheat code finally kicked in, so now he could slam every fire ability at once, right then and there. And Eros didn't have a clue what was going on. Then it clicked fast. He could use magic, and if that. So when that finally hits him, he charges in with a fire spear, and it obliterates the bear for good. Eros starts to sweat, totally freaked out by what's going on. It wasn't just magic he'd never tried before, it was power he couldn't figure out how to use, like it was hiding in plain sight. The truth? The cheat code operator ability had to be the key, and once it clicked, everything felt terrifyingly strange. If they wanted to boost their attack power, they'd need a special move, and increase attack power ability. Nobody had ever heard of some secret cheat code operator like that. The princess fires back, what kind of ability is that? And Ero begins to explain. Since they haven't been living there for a while, the princess hates all that stiff formality with the meets, and she decides to ask to go ahead and to call her by name. He warned that those honorifics were banned for her, because she was just like that second princess. Eros finally gets that everything's going to be okay, and once that clicks, the world knows his family as the kind who's destined to be fine. Eros grew up hearing the same legend, one role the royal family guarded for generations, and that's exactly how he ended up meeting the second. When the princess is with his still holy sword-bearing father, Eros keeps talking with her. Because the moment she hits that marriage age, she's supposed to ask to marry Eros, and somehow he's already drifting, barely noticing what's happening around him. He starts wondering if things will keep going like this the whole time. Soon, Ares blurts out that he's got news for the princess, and asks if she's ready right there. Listening, he's not the holy of the sword, and the whole situation is wildly different than you think. He cut ties with his family, and now the royal family wants nothing to do with him, because he failed to earn the ability. The princess shrugs and says she can't forgive him, but she insists it's still okay. He didn't have the knack for it, and he swore the whole kingdom was rotting to the core. So that's why the princess was being sent out on a trip in the first place. With Eros, he size up the situation fast, and admits he'd probably get arrested for kidnapping the princess of the. So I'm looking for someone from the royal family, because I need a writer to draft the letter. Family, and so nobody needed to panic, except Eros. Says that isn't a problem, then leans in and asks why the princess followed him in the first place, because there's more going on here. She chased one thing above all, staying right by his side, and blurts out if that's really good. Eros tells her it's okay, and for a little while he lets her stay close. Then she ends up. She was scrambling to improvise new abilities mid-fight, battling through every second while pushing past her limits, until she. And her power, Holy Mage, lets her call for help the moment things hit the fan. Then he spots a stone. A stone starts glowing in the bear and he can't resist. He snatches it to figure out what it really is, and now his mind races to one terrifying thought. What happens if he sells it? That in the nearby villages, but nobody has the slightest idea what that even is. That was exactly the moment everything changed, at the very start of the conference. They whispered that the princess wasn't really born to the king's bloodline. She was an illegitimate daughter, born to a woman who'd arrived from some far-off village and clung to the king as if hope itself could be forced. Sure, her run at the throne had a rough start, with success nowhere near guaranteed, but through it all, the king still loved the princess's mother, and that love didn't look like it was fading. It's the perfect move for her to rush to the royal castle, and as soon as she arrives, she practically beams, saying the village was lovely, the rice was delicious, and the air was so clean it felt unreal. So Eros wastes no time and decides to take a look before everything spirals, but they still might have to go back. Storm back to the royal capital to grab a carriage. Then you arrive and it's packed with people everywhere. Crowds surged around him, clueless about what was going on. Then arrows started ripping past, and every eye snapped straight to him. And the moment he admits he's the family's failure, he gets kicked out of his own house. Then he tells the princess to stay with him, but just when things settle, something snaps Eros' attention. 3 men cut in and asked, "Were you talking to us?" They claimed they were adventurers and demanded help from Eros right away. He should act like a model citizen and make room for them, because if he didn't get it, they'd still end up doing more for society than Eros ever could. That's exactly why he's got to go. Right then, a woman shows up and blasts them for their awful behavior, saying nobody even called for an urgent request for them. And if they can't follow orders, they should crawl back to the lowest level of adventurer there is. The adventurers snapped back, getting irritated. They vowed they'd kill that woman, and Eros knew he had to step in. So he snapped into action, activated his cheat ability, and burned a chunk of his own attack power to make it happen, thus he. And when they get blasted his way, he shoves every last one flying off as far as he can. The guy is frozen in terror, and he can't stop wondering how something like that even happened. Like it was hit so hard it almost broke him. Seriously, he takes the hit, drops to the ground, and laughs like he's fine. But yeah, that could have hurt, and he's still alive, so pretty soon he asks again. Arrows blurts out what he was doing, then snaps that he only hit him with some basic ability. And the adventurers immediately scatter, swearing they'll remember this. While the princess muses, maybe Eros is stronger than your own father. But Eros barely ever got to see his father, and now he's afraid his power just won't hold up. It's way beyond the holy of the sword. Then that mysterious cheat code power kicks in and everything changes. That operator, he might be even more monstrous than you can imagine. Then right faster than anyone expects, new info pops up for the arrows and boom, his ability level shoots higher. Because the battle ended in victory, now Eros can read his target's raw physical power, and that alone hints he might unlock way more abilities if he plays his cards right. But it was insanely dangerous. Basically, he can only use powers only people can unlock, and once a few people hear them, those abilities can multiply. So what's the tiniest number that could start it all? And it was so rare and powerful that the kingdom could use it for something absolutely vital. For a person like that, the stakes are everything. Eros has 3 abilities right now, and maybe it's smarter to lay low until someone can figure out if. Until his limits, the princess snaps, "Why did you go quiet so fast, Eros?" He asks if she's okay, she waves it off, says it's nothing, and tells him not to worry because Dudley's been handling the holy sword, and sure, he doesn't have the best reputation, but he looks tough, and honestly, he's got a real personality. So Eros presses onward, asking something. She blurts out why she knows Dudley so well, then cracks him in the face and sticks out her tongue, but when it comes to Eros, she can't even get a word out. So in Eros's family mansion, Dudley came in barking orders, pushing everyone to clean the place up. Watch those messes unfold, one disaster at a time. He can't stop thinking, how much longer is he going to be forced to wait? She's the successor of the Holy Sword, and if she even has a moment, she might still scramble to set everything up. But the maid is almost sobbing, and she can't stop wondering why. Here's the real reason Dudley was cooking up all those awful things, while Eros stayed sweet and kind through it all. And with Eros acting way too calm, the maid couldn't find the words that day, and she sank into the same heavy sadness. Sadness became his whole world, because ever since the Master of Abilities handed him that pain, it never let go. They scrambled to stay glued to Eros' side as fast as they could, but it's not game over yet. Eros still needs her to spot him again. He tries to push on, even if he doesn't know how, but then he can't stop wondering, what the heck is happening? They just can't see the kind, complimentary side of him. And while he was waiting for his own ability to kick in, everything somehow spiraled into becoming exactly his. Orphans stepped in and took care of him, because the truth was, their powers kept hinting they'd get different abilities, but those wishes never once came true. Turns out it was the perfect kind of irony. Arrows were given a power that could decide the outcome. They were trying to make it sound like this freakishly high-level trash wasn't luck at all. It was just something a kid was born with. Eros had to show a good personality, but right then he slipped into the shadows and asked, "So what was my father doing?" Pretending he didn't notice it at all, and the princess snapped back that she didn't like that he was supposed to listen when she needed him, and now that can't happen anymore. And nobody has a clue which candidate will get escorted to her. She just shrugs and says it doesn't matter if he's got abilities that don't run in the family, because as long as she's by his side, that's all that counts. And it all came down to the words she was spitting out. Right there, you've got an adventurer guild near the village. And nobody would ever see it coming, except it could be a tiny one. She was dying to team up with him and become adventurers together. No ifs, no buts. With Eros, yeah, but that's impossible because even if she's from the village, everyone will clock that she's royal. And that changes everything. That was awesome, but maybe just. They could walk in under a pseudonym, and the second they were in the guildmaster's presence, the whole place practically burst with excitement to have them there. Spend an adventurer's life with Eros, until the carriage lurches hard and the princess gets thrown bam. Getting thrown onto him, then that mouth-watering smell of meat hits, and she crumples completely weak, apologizing as she says. She snapped back that she didn't want anything like that to happen, because arrows, once they start flying, could hit at any moment so. Eros still has to take it, then he fires back asking if this isn't some higher-class monster. The friends are scrambling to fight it off, but the situation's ugly, and that's exactly why time now can make these travels feel even more brutal. Also, common people stay. At that moment, Arrow told them to come back. Then he shrugged like it was fine and promised he'd find some way to help. The venturers can't stop wondering what could possibly go down, and Arrow just shrugs. No way is he a holy swordsman. And even with his tough training still running, he can serve as support for them for now, so the adventurer nods, says it's fine but warns. The second things get too dangerous, he must bail immediately. Gets the whole situation instantly, plus that third power, the visual one, is. This was the perfect opening to test just how powerful the target really was. Time to finally put that power to the test for real. As they stride toward the fight, they spot tons of injured people and doctors are swamped, working non-stop to keep them alive. Those adventurers are the same kind as the rest, the ones tagging along with Eros so. Then the front lines started going crazy. High-class adventurers began showing up in droves. They're not winning, no way. Right now, only Eros's one calm friend is holding steady, because for the first time a top-tier battle has only 3 fighters, and that's when everything changes. The moment they faced that giant monster felt unreal. It was also the first time they'd ever seen one. That monster was so huge they couldn't hold on a second longer, so yeah, it's been a while since the fight started, and now it feels like the finale is finally here. And when the star adventurers closed in, the battle was practically over, and everything dropped onto the ground, because they couldn't get past the 3 high-class adventurers. And that wasn't some prank. No one could wrap their heads around how that battle could even happen, and then there was a colossal monster grabbed one of the adventurers and twisted them around like nothing mattered. Like pure survival didn't even exist. It felt like the world turned into cloth and started ripping him in half. Panic hit the protagonist hard, so they bolted straight for the guild to report it, and Arrow ended up holding his. He brandishes his sword and snaps that this adventurer can't possibly take it on alone, because there's no other way forward, and if he stays, he might just die and Eros ends up trying to figure out just how far the cheat code operator could go. The adventurers didn't dare imagine death for even a second. Tries to lift himself just a little, but the giant monster clocks it instantly, so finally snaps and attacks the adventurer for good, once and for all. Eros finally hits the trigger, boom, his attack power skyrockets. Power, and that's why he ends up. Eros slams a F*******ing hit into the giant monster, and it gets thrown down hard, crashing to the ground. Right when he caught sight of himself, the 2 adventurers stumbled into the scene. They stared at the girl sprawled on the ground, and he made the call to give up. A single potion tour, and one attack, Eros pulled off something no one thought was possible, and maybe his power is the real key. When the girl finally wakes, they ask if she felt any pain and she says no more. Then the giant stirs, rises again, and keeps getting worse. Lately, Eros can't stand the irritation anymore, so he clocks what's happening and turns to the other adventurers, begging them to team up with him and take down that monster, no matter how brutally strong it is. And with that blade, they can't quit, because soon he's going to demand at least the people or else they're done. To help him somehow, so they demanded answers and then they asked the. So they name him Eros, the brave swordsman who ends up passing his name on. And that's when the family's presence hits her, and the realization finally starts to dawn. No matter what he does, not a single person will speak up. About that, Eros was a top-tier swordsman, the kind who made every duel look effortless. Then the monster barrels straight toward, like it's coming for a final, brutal showdown. Eros decided to hold back for a moment, waiting for the perfect opening to strike. The pressure crushing him felt absolutely ridiculous. But right after that, he slams the brakes and stops to take a breather, because something's about to change. He sizes up his 3 powers, then decides, right then, to activate them. He spots a bar decked out with tiny bars, totally clueless how it's supposed to work. Then he quickly asks if he'll even want to visualize the power. And if he sees it too, he'll immediately want to visualize just how much damage they dealt to that giant. That giant, yeah, and that's exactly what Eros is trying to prove, because parts of its body are already wrecked, so the idea that everyone else could stay calm. That hope lasted about as long as a single hit. Eros sees how badly the fight already wrecked everyone and decides to ask if he should pull his legs in even tighter. Because if that giant lands a hit on him, he's dead for sure, so Eros dodges and keeps moving. He charges in for the attack because he knows he's got a shot, and then he dives right back in. He used the trick straight from his family, his first secret technique. Then he charged forward with everything he had. He grips the phoenix sword and unleashes that insane power on the towering giant. Then drains every last fire attribute into one brutal magic, and with everything burning inside him, he sprints to the others, shouting for all of them. They tried to flee until the real question hit them: why run right now when the giant already looked like it was finished? That didn't make sense. He had no way out, and this wasn't something that could be undone. The whole thing felt like a wrecking ball, like everyone was pounding it so hard that it just couldn't hold. And after all that, it was barely holding on, an arrow, already spilling its last breath. He only landed his final hit, obviously that was Eros handing over an attack. Then, not long after, they started asking Eros why he hadn't used magic a little sooner. And honestly, you can't just pull that off unless you're an insanely experienced adventurer. It was all in their heads, nothing but a lie, and right then he marched up to them. Approaches picking up another one of those stones, and it's more of that same stuff in the bear's body too. Only this time, Eros finally shows up that night, and the princess launches onto him, bursting with excitement that he's okay, even as sheer worry gnaws at her heart like she can't believe anything might have happened to him. Eros ends up. He darts in, blurts out thanks, and hands her flowers, insisting they're the only thing he could pull off. Then she reaches for them, smiling as she accepts the bouquet. "Don't worry," they said, and with that they finally rolled into the village, so quiet and peaceful, nothing like the capital. And honestly, it felt like a breath of fresh air it was. After a while, they finally caught their breath so they could dive back into the adventures the next day, while the adventurer next to him leaned in and said she wanted to. He demanded a swordsmanship lesson with Eros, because after seeing what he could already do, Eros knew the gap was only getting wider compared to his father. He's got a ton left to learn, but the princess shuts it down. Starting today, he'll get direct training instead. He follows the princess's orders to the letter, and then he blurts out, "So what kind of instructions are we talking about?" The adventurer snaps that the princess needs to respect her station, then slyly steers Eraz's focus, pointing out that he never even managed to accomplish it. He dreamed of becoming the master swordsman, yet that battle still knocked the wind out of him, because it hit him like pure brutal difficulty. She even believed he was exactly the blade that the new era needed, and both she and the princess trusted that he was far more honorable than Dudley Eros. And when it came time for him to hear it, he burst out laughing. He said it might sound blown out of proportion, but the truth is he was genuinely happy, and then his father picks Dudley, and suddenly it's the silver swordsman, not his own kid, standing in the spotlight, and nobody wants to touch that mess right now, because before long, every unanswered question is about to explode. Nobody could answer the questions that were flying around, at least not clearly. After the princess finished her bath with Eros asleep, she leaned in and asked if he'd been listening, and Eros shot back, asking whether she was wearing only a towel. She leans in and asks, "So, is something wrong?" Acting like he didn't notice that kind of thing at all. There's no way that can happen, yet nobody has any clue where that sea starts next. The candidate gets escorted over, because the princess shrugs it off and says it doesn't matter if he has some power no one in the family has ever shown before. As long as she's with him, everything's fine. And when she told you to check for an adventurers guild near the village, you realized no one would ever know. Honestly, it could be a tiny one. She dreamed of teaming up with Eros as adventurers, until reality slammed the door shut, because even if she's from the village, once they catch her, they'll know she's from the royal family. Seriously, that was awesome, but maybe it could. They could slip in with a fake name, and once they were all together with the guildmaster, the whole place buzzed with excitement, until the carriage suddenly lurched and the ride crashed straight into the princess gets hurled right onto him, and the smell of the meat smacks the strength out of her. She gasps an apology, saying she never wanted this to happen. It's always like that, Arrow says, still insisting as she weakly looks to him. So you'd still take arrows? Arrows asks. If that isn't a higher-class monster, then why are the friends fighting it and getting crushed by the situation? That's exactly why this moment could be the key to making it through the travel. The air felt even more tense, but only because Arrow was fighting to protect ordinary people right then. They have to come back, he said. He shrugs it off like it'll be fine and says he'll find a way to help, but the adventurers can't shake the feeling that something big is about to hit. Arrow insists with total certainty that he's no holy swordsman at all. He's still grinding through relentless, rigorous training, so for now, he could just play backup for them, and the adventurers swore it was totally fine. But when things turn deadly, he's gotta bolt right away. Eros gets it instantly. The third ability, the one with the visual. Watching the target's raw power up close was the perfect chance to put that skill to the test. As they start marching toward the fight, they suddenly spot a trail of wounded people everywhere. The doctors were slammed with work, and those adventurers were just like the others who kept close to Eros. And suddenly, the high-class adventurers who have been tearing up the front lines start pouring in, but none of them will win. Only Arrow's friend stays perfectly calm right now, because for the first time, the battle of the high classifications is kicking off at 3. But this time that giant monster didn't just show up, it changed everything. And yeah, this was the very first time they'd ever laid eyes on a monster that big. To the point where they finally couldn't hold on anymore. So yeah, it's been a while since the battle kicked off, and maybe this is where it ready to be dropped in at the end. Because when they finally reached the scene, the fight was basically over, and all the star adventurers lay crumpled on the ground, unable to move, and that wasn't some exaggeration. They couldn't wrap their heads around how that battle even started. Then the truth hit them like a wall. There was a giant. A giant monster twists one of the adventurers like he's just cloth, then rips him clean in half, leaving the protagonist frozen with pure terror, clutching his sword as he and the others decide they have to run straight to the guild and report it. He couldn't take it all on by himself, but he insisted there's no other way, and that it all comes down to this. Arrows can't stop thinking he might drop dead right there. Then he starts wondering just how far that cheat code operator is willing to push things. The adventurers didn't want to die, so one of the girls ends up. He tries to push himself up a little. Then the giant monster clocks it instantly and comes crashing in to attack the. Eros throws himself into it once and for all. Then boom, he triggers the power-up that spikes his attack. So he smashes the giant monster and it crashes hard into the ground. Eros finally spots himself, and that's when the two adventurers meet face to face, staring at the girl who just collapsed. He hits the ground and decides to pop a potion into her with just that one strike. Then the arrows pull off the impossible, like maybe his power is finally enough. So when the girl wakes up, they ask if she felt any pain, and that's where it ends. Then the giant finally hauls itself upright, getting more and more furious. And Eros notices it, so he turns to the other adventurers and asks them to step in and help the one who's about to take action. No matter how strong they are, that monster will still break them, and the only thing they can do is give up. With that sword in hand, he wastes no time. Soon he's begging for help from anyone who can do anything. They ask. He steps up asking the brave swordsman for Eros's name. Then things turn when he blurts it out, along with his whole family, and right there she starts moving. He finally starts to see who he really is. Then the girl introduces herself and it hits like a wall. No one's going to say a word about him because Eros was a straight-up monster with a blade. Then the monster surges forward toward Eros, and Eros chooses to stand his ground and wait. Hold up for a second, defending with that kind of pressure is straight-up ridiculous. He was right on the edge of feeling everything, and then bam, he halts to check his 3 powers and Then he snaps on the strength visualization. Boom, a bar pops up with tiny little segments, yet he has no idea how it even works. Before long he's asking, do you want to visualize the power too? And if you do, will you also want to see just how much? They smash that giant hard, and that's exactly what Iro hoped to prove. Already multiple spots on the giant's body were taking serious damage, and Iro was counting on the next step to finish it. Everyone else stayed calm, like that damage was already too much for a real fight, so that's why Eros thought. The others looked like they could barely move because that fight had already torn them up, and he had to ask, can you shrink it down? He shifts his legs a little more then, if he takes. If that giant's attack ever landed, he'd be dead for sure. So Iro snaps into motion, dodges out of the way, and strikes back because he's got a real shot at winning. He grits his teeth, drops back in his family's sacred style, unleashes the first secret technique, then drives forward with everything he's got to bring the Phoenix sword to life. He unleashes that massive power on the giant, then blasts every single fire ability into one unstoppable magic. Right after that, he dashes in to help his friends and begs them to run, but they demand to know why they should. At that moment, the giant was already dead looking, gone, like its life had snapped in an instant, and that was impossible. He had no way to make it happen. And it still wouldn't bounce back, maybe because everyone kept pounding on it in the first place. It hit with brutal force, and even then there was barely anything left in him because Eros had already spent every last ounce of damage. Clearly, it wasn't like Eros had even made a move, so when they asked if he hadn't used magic earlier, it hit like a shock. Picture this, it wasn't some easy thing anyone could use, because only an extremely skilled person could handle it. Seasoned adventurer with battle scars, he swore it was all in their heads and that it was. It was a blatant lie, then he leans in, grabs another one of those. Those stones, there was even more of that stuff hanging in there. And the bear's body too, only that night. Eros finally comes back and the princess launches onto him. Then she blurts out that she was freaking out because she'd been terrified something happened to him, and Eros just nods and thanks her. And hands her a bouquet, admitting it's all he could scrape together. Then she smiles, takes the flowers, and starts to say. Saying it was fine, they finally reached the village. So quiet it felt nothing like the capital, and honestly it was a breath of fresh air. After a while, the team finally could chase the next adventure the next day, and the adventurer beside them says she wants a swordsmanship lesson with Eros because of what happened with him, because his past abilities had been absolutely crushing. Eros knows the brutal truth, compared to his father he has no chance. He still had tons to learn, but the prince had zero clue what he was doing. Princess shuts him down saying, no, starting today you're done, because he's going to. He's about to get the princess's orders straight from the source, so he blurts out, wait, what kind of instructions are those? And the adventurer answers him. She should hold her head high as royalty, but instead she sidesteps all that and steals Eris's focus. He didn't become the master swordsman he dreamed of, but that moment he fought through felt brutal and unforgettable. That battle gave him the moment he'd been waiting for. She came up with the plan, he's the swordsman this new era demands. Both she and the princess are convinced and they swear Dudley Eros is far more honorable than that. Then he starts laughing like, come on, isn't that a bit exaggerated? What? He might have been exaggerating, but yeah, he was genuinely happy until his father picked Dudley, the silver swordsman, instead of his own son. No one can blame him for snapping in that moment, and soon everything. No one had a clue what was happening with all those questions, and after the princess slipped into her bath, Eros was finally fast asleep. Then she asked. Eros snaps, were you even listening? Then fires another question, and are you wearing just a towel? She leans in and asks, so is there any? Eros says there is, and it hits hard. He was a boy who got kicked out of his own family. And she's royalty born from the royal family, so when she makes a move, if she slips up even once, it could chain reaction into disaster for her entire future. She doesn't care as long as they can claw their way back to that old timeline, so she steels herself and lies. Down in the bed, mutterings. Good night, he tried to get rest too, but Eros' eyes wouldn't shut and sleep just wouldn't come. So after fighting that giant, he forces himself to his feet and keeps moving. He unlocked brand new abilities, nothing like what he ever wanted, so now he could crank his power up and keep pushing even harder. And exposed every target's weakness to the bone, so he hit the cheat code right then, only for a brutal headache to slam him and his vision to spiral into total chaos. Eros can't help it, where am I? He jolts awake in some weird place, then decides to check if he already crossed paths with the guy who was around there before, and they weren't even paying attention to. There it is, this guy lines in and says, we're bursting with energy today. He blurts out, wait, am I losing it? Was I hallucinating? Before long it hits him, this wasn't just any ruler. It was the kingdom's very first king. And his son, the absolute majesty, had already ditched every public duty, but he's got zero patience for that feeling. He still clings to formality like a crown, and somehow he's still the king. Before long, they decide to grab a drink and unwind. He reaches for a drink, but the son straight up refuses to cooperate, saying it was too late, too early still. Then Eros finally clocks exactly who that man was, the strongest swordsman ever, straight from the era of the first king, Eros's predecessor. And before long, the predecessor turns to him and asks what's coming next for development, and the king admits it's a total mess. Then his eyes narrow as he starts thinking about who'll teach the next generation, because with the reincarnation spell looming over them, they've got to bet everything on one promise. Trust the right person, not. Careful about the wrong door, one bad choice and the whole world spirals into ruin, because that person will hand the power to someone who actually wants it. And the worst part is that's coming right after you. And they all nodded like, yeah, that was totally worth it, without a single doubt. With that, the protagonist froze in full paralysis, and Eros had no clue what to do next. Yet somehow he pushed through and finished the legendary swordsman's mission. Still, his mind wouldn't stop spinning about what was really going on. Then he confirmed the next mission. She was the true origin behind the strongest school of his family's fighting style. So Eros starts training hard until he can slice clean through an entire tree. He stared at the tree like it was magic, then wondered how he pulled it off, or claimed his blade was just that good. And the legendary school was the only one that could climb to the absolute pinnacle of swordsmanship. The crowd was already chanting at Eros, begging him to. He tries to pass every last bit of his power to the next generation, and maybe that's why Eros was picked as the successor. Then Eros bursts into laughter because his mind was. He's completely thrown off, so he decides to shut his eyes and sleep. Meanwhile, at Eros' place, someone starts pushing the idea of giving up, and it's his father talking to someone else about what Dudley had ruined everything. Now all the maids were marching out, and while the business was starting to swell, his father tightened his grip, holding it all together like a rope that wouldn't break. For that family to stay grounded in reality, and now they'd have to. Before Leon can deal with any of that, he's suddenly called out. Dudley demands the name of his biological son, and when Leon says Eros, the boy just shrugs, saying it's okay, and then there's something else. Something happened, something he'll never, ever forget, and Dudley says Mary. A woman there was packing up to leave because of Eros, even if he's stronger. Eros' fate hits harder, and before long they're firing the same question. Where the hell is Eros at this very moment? Meanwhile, Eros got tossed into a mess, right as the princess was shoved into his arms to fall asleep inside her dream. Eros had 3 versions. Then, just when everything felt too still, someone shows up to slam the doors open and make them wake up, but the woman blurts out an apology for cutting in, and just like that, they decide to walk away. Because right then, everything changes. Now it's time to register as adventurers. First, the girl asks for Eros. A question could treat her more informally because they were both adventurers, yet somehow it still felt hard to juggle all that. In public, he played it formal, but in private, he could do exactly that. Before long, she sighed that it was fine, then she urged him to call her his wife, and Eros decided to start the journey once and for all. Right after that, the girl jumps in and asks if anything changed, and he keeps pressing, demanding to know what was happening because the truth is, he was completely different from the last day. Then the girl presses in and asks if Eros handed over everything from the battle up above. Yeah, the one from before, but nope, it wasn't like that at all, because once he learned to digging deeper into his family's fighting spirit, he pushed past the surface and reached something far more inner, his ticket to becoming a high-class adventurer. And every single person couldn't wait to learn more about swords with Eros. And just like that, not long after, the princess finally stumbles onto her missing. Right then, Grandma hurried in too, just passing by, and whispered to the princess, "Careful, don't let the knights catch you." Because of her, the whole village finally turns and accepts the princess, once and for all. And honestly, it's the kind of place where life feels calm, even out there beyond the capital. Soon, everyone started whispering, who was that boy walking beside the princess and talking to her like he owned the place, with that kind of fearless confidence? They talked like total pros, all casual and fearless, like nothing could ever stay ordinary with them, and somehow that wild charm never once faded. Somehow he pushes through, and then, right on time, he finally reaches the adventure. The receptionist finally caves in and accepts that. It's been ages since they last saw each other, and the princess is even saying she was. He starts thinking about registering as an adventurer with Eros. Then the receptionist drops the bombshell. Take the exam, and she even asks if he's really sure things will turn out that way. The princess says yes, and right after that, Eros fires back, "What kind of exam was that?" And the answer practically screams itself. You'll have to square up with medium or high-ranked adventurers first, because only then can you unlock the real inner knowledge of Eros' ability, and even then. Just then someone calls out, grabbing Eros' attention, because this guy's got a seriously complicated ability. An adventurer walks up. Eros approaches, and before he can even react, the man blurts out that he knows everything that's going on. Eros had been stone quiet before, but now the mess is only getting worse. And right after that, the princess finally says that kind of attitude screamed no manners, so she snapped right away and demanded who the guy was standing there. Then the adventurer shot back, asking if she wanted him to strike her, and right after that So the princess leaned in and asked if she was. And the adventurer breaks into a grin and blurts out, "Yes." Yeah, it turns out it was just that. Right when he's done landing that hit, Eros swings right back, right after, saying he'll take the test with that advantage. A top-notch adventurer, thriving like a force of nature, so if this counts as official, then the other adventure is only the beginning of the story. Would stand right by Eros' side, because stuff like that mattered more than anything, and it was honestly the real reason why. It looked downright lethal, so those arrows had to go all in right there, in that exact moment. because the legendary swordsman's son was ready to unleash his ability. Eros gets annoyed fast when his power gets shut down against some random guy, and the whole situation keeps rattling on full of weak moves and too much noise. Because honestly, Eros has a feeling the adventurer's really hiding the true ability. Then he should kick things off with the current power he's already mastered from his past battles. He doesn't even know how far he can push himself before the adventure cuts off. The adventurers catch it instantly. This guy's posture is so sharp he can't help but look impressed, and then he surges forward toward. Eros talks his way through it, and before long he's just hired. Then the adventurer gushes that it was a great move until Eros immediately asks. He couldn't hold back the betrayal anymore, so it was time to strike right now. Soon, Eros snaps and asks what happened as he throws the man into the wall, then goes, "You're going to fight for real, this isn't some exam." And the whole adventure is about to kick off. The adventurer snaps, demands a serious fight with Eros, and Eros lunges forward 1 seconds later, then 2, and he's already standing right beside the adventurer. The adventurer seethes and makes the same demand again, and Eros strikes the same way 1, then 2, and again he's instantly at his side. 3 arrows is already right on the adventurer's heels, and 4 arrows has already started making their move. He lunged in from behind and struck before they could even turn around. Eros was still way more relentless than his opponent, and when he finally struck the adventurer, he crumpled to the ground, sobbing that it hurt like hell. Then the adventurer speaks. That guy was only promoted to the medium class, and somehow turned right around and started bullying all the new recruits, so they had to shut that down fast. Maybe Eros can be the one to make this actually acceptable. An excessive assault, then everything stopped cold because it was. But don't sweat it, because that person's sheer determination lets them power through and pull off what they set out to do. Unleashing brutally strong attacks at all hours of the day. Eros knows it too, and he snaps awake, telling Eros he'll never let him pull something like that, never again. Thusly, the princess leans in and tells him it's the perfect time to swallow his pride, admit defeat, and do it now. The moment's right around the corner, right before the next part. The adventurer demands, "Who are you?" And the princess fires back, "I'm," as she introduces herself, then presses him. If he remembers what he said earlier, what's he still so hooked on? He asks, "So you passed the test," and the adventurer doesn't even hesitate, "Yeah." Eros lights up on the spot, and the girls gush that they always believed in him. Then it hits him. Being an adventurer is way better than he ever imagined. His registration as an adventurer was. He finally gets it done, and the woman drops her pride to apologize because he started at the bottom rank, and before long he shot up to the top. Eros says he doesn't sweat a thing because his ranking wasn't built for combat or power. Just wait, because that's where it all begins. His wild life as an adventurer. Even after all that, he leans in and presses her for her name, and asked if he could sell his materials, and right after, the woman snapped out a yes. She even had fangs and fur like some wild creature. Then she told him to wait for the perfect moment. She can't possibly risk holding something that valuable, so right then someone shows up, and it's the guild master himself. He starts picking apart every single thing the protagonist brought, and I ask his name right after. So basically, Eros finally steps up and introduces himself, and the guildmaster already knows exactly who he is. He finally says his name too, and when Eros hears it, memories crash back. Decades ago they met, and the guildmaster was famous as the best healer, even in the capital. Eros' father Leon used to drop by his place, and then fast, Leon learned the man had vanished. Torn away from the capital, he never once imagined he'd end up in some backwater village, running the place as a guild master. When he heard the whole story, Leon has no idea what hit him. He can't even process walking away from his own son while problems piled up around him. But in that situation, it was already too late. Somehow he even got mistaken for Eros. Yet right then, he was standing shoulder to shoulder with good-hearted people, totally clueless that he was about to rise and become the master of a sword. Right now, the guild master's life isn't in the worst shape, but he swears it's one of the best Falakan around, and then he pushes further, asking if Eros could still be the guild master. He even says he'd be honored, so next thing you know, he's going to start from the outside. Eros ends up insisting, and suddenly that sword is made to explore the village. So the moment they turned, they didn't even get a real look. Meanwhile, with the adventurer yanked off to an emergency, Eros guides the princess, and she starts showing them the fountain, breathless, calling it utterly beautiful. That restaurant was gorgeous, and the owner was one of my own people. It guts me because as soon as you step into the village, those mysterious men start steering the way, and Eros' own pull kicks in right in the middle of it. Soon after that, princess, he blurts out, "So why is Eros?" He says it wasn't like that, but one thing's clear, she was way too hyped, like they were on a real date. But with him, it was never gonna go down like that, so they end up going out together. And the moment they walked out, everything felt weird. People started shouting about Eros to their store, and maybe next time, because the second word spreads, Everyone's buzzing, thrilled to go, and the hype won't let up even when they're visiting without. Eros ends up becoming one of the village's most talked about figures, nothing like the capital, because the people here are warm, welcoming, and weirdly calm. Ever since the day he finally unlocked those abilities, it feels like he's meeting real kind-hearted people for the very first time. But the second Eros lays eyes on the princess, he's totally thrown off when he spots her from before, remembering the day he played with her by the fountain. Eros finally ends up thanking him, saying, "That was seriously awesome." She had an insanely fun time, then the princess just bursts out happy, shrugging it off like, abilities don't matter, because she doesn't care at all that he's the master. Swordsman or not, none of that matters. He's just Eros, the one she's always crushed on. And when it all goes down, Eros even breaks into thanks, ending with F. For everything she said right then, and from that night on it all changed. Eros ends up striking it big and gaining a sword. The guild master leans in and says, "It was absolutely incredible." He slammed together the highest quality sword he could in a short time, and yeah, he was definitely a total beast. A strong ability user, then right after, Eros dives into sword training and everyone loses it like, "That's insane." The guildmaster boasts that his lineage is flawless, so of course his family name was destined to live on in the blood forever. Red blood kept spilling and Leon lost more than he should have, until he got drunk on power and glory and forgot what mattered most, and right then from here he starts apologizing like, "Sorry for all of that." Ero finally breaks the silence, saying it's alright, calling the whole thing special. Then praises the sword like it's the legendary first blade in decades, the kind of quality they've never even heard of, and I swear I'll make Ero something far more special in return. He humbly calls it an honor, but my stomach tightens because right then someone rushes up to me, there are problems. The receptionist steps in, asking what's going on, and that's when we learn wolves are suddenly showing up near the village. The adventurers from the capital are flooding in, way too many to count, because there's an urgent call for help for all the adventurers ranked medium to high, because the village guilds still demand places as calm as peace itself, like that. Pretty soon, it latches onto Eros and flat out tells him that even though he's from the absolute lowest, he should trust Eros with all of that, no question, yet Eros ends up convinced the white wolves are medium, even though the truth is way more tangled than it sounds. It was all tangled up, like it was part of the group maybe. Once Eros finally got what was going on, he snapped that he'd do his absolute best with the soul. A sword is raised and the princess blurts out she's coming too, while everyone watches in the middle, because they're basically gearing up for the next generation to become the best swordsman. Then it all goes down when it falls. The tears of rage and fear spill from his eyes and right away he panics. Then the adventurers finally start to notice. Right when it started snowballing into an even bigger disaster, an old friend suddenly shows up, right after the last. The swordsman snaps that he can feel Eros right there, and when the adventurer finally spots the princess, he blurts out, "Who is she?" Because she looks. It looked weirdly familiar, like I'd seen it before. The princess snapped that it was just his imagination. Then boom, more than 100 white wolves appeared in the next scene and the place went dead silent. And it's down to just 20 adventurers, because every wolf's power quietly ramps up on its own, boosted by support from the. So if this luck keeps going, they're gonna keep getting wiped, which means they have to fight for real. After studying the monster's resistance just a bit, he finally starts picking it apart and eliminating it. The weakest start unraveling their coordination, and Eros rushes in, smashing a few, then snaps, "See, you're finally starting to get so close to death it makes your heart slam. Then tell yourself it'll be fine if they can wipe out every last wolf," even though the man starts panicking at the sight of it all. Everyone froze into stone, and right then he blurted, "Wait," because that sword could lock every monster in place, so it was go time, until he got a little too carried away and ended up doing way more than he should. Soon, it wasn't enough anymore. Those adventurers ended up saying Eros was out of his mind, and that's when it sparked something in one of them to become an adventurer. Soon after, he gets hit with questions about whether he's from the family, until another adventurer steps in and blurts out that Leon groaned, swore he'd toss out the son and his uncle, and the moment the words left his mouth, maybe the man asks whether it was about honor, because they can't ignore that he messed up. Yet it's really just to understand what strength truly means, with nothing left to toss aside for gratitude, yet he was still seething with rage and it. But it wasn't about that at all. He charged in and wiped out the monsters. Now it was only that adventurer, finally reaching the very end. He was just trying to steal the credits and Eros wouldn't let him. He didn't care a bit, then real quick he caught it. Then white wolves started showing up and the whole situation turned messy in a heartbeat. Something felt wildly wrong, and when he glanced to the side he noticed. You notice someone is trying to vanish, then a breakaway happens, and right after that the adventurer steps in and asks if any survivors are still out there. The man vows he'll take them all down by himself. No backup, no mercy. While Eros sprints the princess through the halls, he's already sure of one thing: something is coming and it's big. Felt completely out of place, like a mystery snapping into existence out of nowhere, and she was battling one monster after another. Monsters keep showing up in a tiny time window, and some are still insanely strong, so something's definitely off again. He closes in and mutters, "Looks like I'm the only one who noticed how strange this is." Soon after, Eros rips into the original form of the first form and locks in, perceiving everything. Eros caught the mysterious person's breathing, and the moment he realized what it meant, he unleashed his brand new power, then surged straight at the monster in a blink. He quickly noticed something off. There was a staircase dropping down right in front of him, and suddenly they were left there. Left standing there totally clueless, like the world had frozen on him and the truth suddenly felt impossible to name. Eros spots a hideout and it turns out way easier than he ever expected. So the princess blurts that Eros is incredible and there's zero time to waste, then they storm in. Everything had to be double-checked, because the air itself felt wrong, like something huge was brewing and maybe Eros just stumbled on the real bombshell. Before long he's demanding, "Do you think it's true?" Either way, this was a jaw-dropping win for any adventurer. Eros realizes he's trapped in there, decodes what's going on around him and pushes through the confusion besides. And on top of that there was even. Then there's this other plan. After the maid he just delivered ends up getting Eros' attention, he asks what he's doing there and the whole scene erupts into screaming, so he makes his move and decides. Inside, Eros suddenly sensed a strange presence, like something was watching him. The adventurer straight up says, "That wasn't right, was it?" And the proof is right there. He'll take care of the wolves and those arrows. They can sprint ahead because he's still in the thick of it. A mid-tier adventurer with big dreams and even bigger danger waiting around the corner. So he could unleash arrows and put those wolves down without breaking a sweat. Then the princess and the others bolted, and before long everyone was gone. He swallowed his doubts and chose to trust Eros. Then he noticed his maid was chained to someone else, watched her get snatched by a shadowy crew, and right when he tried to stop it, they hauled her away and she's an incredible woman, every good thing about her shines through, and people genuinely feel lucky to have her. Plus, she's stunning, turning every thirsty man into a total mess the moment she walks in. She snaps that he shouldn't pull something like that. Then it's only a moment before Eros shows up, insisting he won't stand by while anything like that goes down. Jade finally snaps and calls out, realizing Eros is the one they're supposed to send for the Yes Master. He's living proof that a power can fail, and in the capital everyone can't stop whispering about his downfall. Watching Eros fight with pure perfection, I couldn't believe it. He mowed down every last enemy. She lights up and blurts, "Wait, what happened to him?" A weird arrow presence had stirred earlier, and before long the power the princess had just unlocked is what she's talking about. Right when the maid starts to say the princess's name, the girl snaps her words shut. He snaps off the maid's care, insisting he's only doing it to keep that wound under control. So Eros gets forced to leave the princess to handle the maid, and the enemy walks off the same way, leaving the princess alone. It finally gets up, but that last strike wasn't the kind that meant it was over for that guy's life. He had to squeeze out valuable intel on that guy, and he couldn't let him get away. Him lose his life quickly, the man finally notices. He clocks that he's been cut off and blurts out, "Who's that guy?" Then two shadowy men slide in fast and say, "They told him we're gonna dig into what's going on from here." And sure enough, they showed up fast, here to rescue him. "So you're telling me you're a woman willing to risk your own life for something like this? Then you'd better be a ridiculously confident swordsman." Eros finds it downright strange. Then the maid begs him not to worry, urging him to run because she knows he can survive. Survive soon, Arrow blurts that she doesn't. No need to stress, stuff like that just doesn't happen. Doesn't suit her at all. Right as Eros steps in, he says it's fine that he whoa. The adventurers snap with irritation. If we don't stop this, Eros is going to lose everything. He was determined to chase something better because he refused to live a miserable life. So Eros clenches up and gears for battle because everyone suddenly feels that massive, overwhelming presence in the air. Then Eros charges forward, locks eyes with the enemy and goes straight for the attack. Me after I just wrecked the bald guy. One of the hooded figures, then the other. He taps his cheat code, boosting his attack power just enough to swing the fight. So, he lunges into battle and starts attacking everyone all at once, unleashing every power he learned for his family's name. The enemies crumpled to the ground in the blink of an eye, and everyone's jaw dropped. Then Ero grinned and said he'd gotten stronger way more than he ever expected. So even if he's just some low-class nobody. Even with everything still stacked against him, the classification adventurer Eros could press onward in the right direction, while that radical Order of Salvation organization loomed, ready to cut him off. They're operating across the kingdom, and all they want is they craved a one-of-a-kind way to worm into the kingdom's government and shove their ideals into power, and they didn't blink before turning to violence against anyone who stood in their way. Some of them were so fragile that one little mistake spiraled into huge incidents that grabbed the whole world's attention. Yeah, those guys were behind it all. One hooded one shouted that Enro's a monster, and he was hunting for a way to slip into their ranks, figuring out how to infiltrate them, and that this could totally land as a crime. Then Enro just cuts in like, I'm just. He was broke, and it hit him that this was bigger than some arrows, like they weren't even the real point at all. Needed more work, so he decided to march up and ask the guy if. So he decided to spill every last thing he had. When they asked, he snapped, yes, and told them all those things were. Eros's perfectly timed pick of the stone instantly snapped every monster's focus to him, and just like that, chaos erupted. While everything spiraled out of control, no way was Eros letting that slide. And once he started smashing every monster, he gripped the stone with pure everything he had. Until right there, they froze in place, stunned, like they couldn't even breathe. Eros only nodded, and yes was the end of it. And that they could drag the adventurers in there to stop them, yeah, that's what it seems like. To dig deeper, they had to get more information. Meanwhile, right near the village, the adventurer was mowing down every monster, and everyone was buzzing because he was fighting with pure courage, pushing himself to the limit with everything he had, and it was still only the beginning of what he'd give. And he didn't need to measure himself against that swordsman who was being used for it. Useless kicked out of the family soon after. Right then, a carriage suddenly rolls in and starts to. They finally close in and straight up ask what's going on there, because those people were running way too late. Too late, those white wolves had already burned through every last hope. Right after that, the cavalryman snaps at the adventurer to step back because he's got no work on his hands, but before long everyone realizes Eros is already stepping in ahead of the chaos. So the adventurer snaps, raging that it includes every last white wolf. Teach them to speak with arrows, then ask, you good? And if they spot something, they truly need it. And it looked like there was some insanely sacred information hidden in there. So if they teamed up, they could finally make it work. To collect that information, everyone was desperate for that kind of prize. They also heard Eros snagged some seriously valuable gems, and when they asked about it, he brushed it off like it wasn't a big deal. The real problem was this: they had to find a way to get the adventurer lines in, grilling him about his big achievement, like it's supposed to be real, and then moments later. After checking one last detail, the hideout suddenly realizes that some women were kidnapped, but after saving them all, the shock hits everyone and the same thought starts to creep in. After Eros thanked in that hideout, the walls were packed with women trapped and imprisoned. People craved real prosperity, and it all seemed tied to how that group's leader was treated. Yet the members kept searching and found no one inside that place, and Eros never even noticed the gaps. No rescue association was waiting out there in the middle, and no matter how deadly it gets, you'd still have to picture something like that. The whole point of the organization. And still no one knows why, but in those days, interrogations started rolling in from the capital's own men, and people began vanishing there too, and it all spiraled out of control. Yeah, the adventurer says. Then his eyes snap open as he realizes the rumors were nothing like the truth. Eros didn't stay in the family spot he lost, so he came back, grabbed what he wanted for free, and used that code operator to level up into something better. While in the castle, Leon was still firing off. Everything I do. He was stunned. He couldn't wrap his head around how his son was being praised for saving that hideout full of people. And when the first prince finally said yes then. And somehow it's all fine now, even though they're still calling that mix of missing pieces ability of deficient. But he swept through countless battles so fast they couldn't even keep up. Everyone called him the hero of it all. Meanwhile, Dudley puts on such a convincing act that nobody can truly pin anything on him or ever earn his trust or even the royal families. And just when it seems the kingdom can't get any better, Eros just grabbed a power worth going all in for. So now they've got to look at everything, because a hero like that changes what the kingdom needs for its future. Leon blares that he'll prove fast that Dudley is better than someone like Eros. And everyone is terrified the family won't end this way because they're all betting on him. Not long after, they pile into the carriage to head back, and Eros talks about how the investigation is finally wrapped up, with everything starting to click into place. Now the maid snaps the question back, why is she really here? She digs in and asks if Eros plans to come back because they need him. Ero blurts that he can't pay her, and the girl snaps back that she doesn't want a single coin. Those days they spent together were the best of her life, but one thing's clear, she refuses payment. And she's made it crystal clear, she has no intention of living for Dudley either. Once she agrees, the princess drops the bombshell that she says next. And if Dudley had to escort her too, it'd still be awful, so honestly they should all just live alone. Eros then catches their looks and blurts that they'll live together as much as possible, but the maid shoots back that she'd still live. They'll live together with him, and it's as simple as this. Just stay calm, then right after, everything moves forward. So yeah, Eros ends up face to face with the adventurer's leader. and he flat out says he's damn proud that things are going so well for Eros. It was way too late, he needed sleep right then, and tomorrow he'd finally go after that. Reward, the meat spots that stone and immediately gets totally turned around, staring at everything like it's gone off the map. Things start to feel way too weird, and he decides to test the logic, straight up, just to make sure it holds. Of his ability, and when he noticed how much stronger everything had become, he realized he could also change the. He'll gauge the attack power of his target. If that ability name is anything to go by, this thing is terrifyingly strong even right now, so ahead, he'll just go rest while the princess rockets onto the protagonist, and he barely dodges in time, then she snaps, "Why do you fight like that?" Then the chaos hits again. This time the princess leaps onto him and Eros catches her, holding her up in midair. She danced out of the way, narrowly slipping past every one of her opening attacks. Soon the girl snaps that she can't be taken seriously, and Ero fires back that they should rest up instead. Right then he seized the chance to strike back, boom, only for him to go wild with a flurry of tickles, while the maid stormed up and said that dinner's on the table and he can't believe the two are still fuming, so he snaps, "What are you even doing?" Right after that, the princess shows up asking for help, and after a whole round of tickles, her face lights up and she falls asleep smiling. While the maid scrubbed the dishes, Ero jumped in to help, only for the girls. The girl shrugs it off saying, "Yeah, I'm fine, it was anything more than the way she was serving Dudley." So whenever Eros tries to move, the maid shuts it down with, "I've got something I want to do and you don't need to." And the day Eros got banished, her whole world crumbled, she sank into deep, heartbreaking sadness. And there was nothing she could do, people tore him apart with their cruel words, and her heart sank every single time. Still, he was a genuinely kind guy, the kind who would always stand by her side. But when she runs out of what she can do, the girl drops everything and starts apologizing. For refusing to help, and for always acting like she'd rather disappear than care. Still spiraling over everything, Eros finally flashes a smile at the girl, and then decides to hug her. Right then, she instead blurted out that she'd caused Eros a whole storm of problems. And he declares that from now on they'll live together at full speed, and that's when she finally starts to feel it. She finally breathed easy and swore that from here on out she'd serve only Eros, slipping her will through the whole village like a spark that wouldn't go out. Then the next. Some kids manage to stop the arrows in their tracks, and the girls still giggle that they want to marry him when they grow up. So he marches into the Adventurers Guild, where the guild chief steps in and starts talking to him. He teamed up with Eros and handed over the official payment, 2 massive bags of cash. And it was enough money to make Eros feel like he'd just hit the jackpot. He tries to carry it, then finally blurts out that he won't accept anything like that. But the guild chief shot back that this was their way of thanking him for everything he'd done for the people there. And officially, he'd been recognized as an adventurer, and he'd climbed his way up. The princess can't hold back her excitement. And right after that, the promotion hit him, so hard it felt like a punch in the gut. The fastest ever in the guild's history, and it was exactly that choice that ended up making. Everyone went wild. People were buzzing because they all wanted arrows so they could crash right into the group of fighters. Then he shouted for everyone to hold up, and when they listened, they bolted straight for the forest to vanish before heading to their next destination. Soon after, deep in the forest, the princess snaps, asking if she really has to live in a place like this, because walking through there felt horrifying to her and the bugs made it even worse. And right when Eros tries to deal with it all, he ends up getting completely lost in the chaos. The truth, she's always been terrified of insects. Sex, yeah, that detail made Eros go pale, and the talk somehow snapped to the house right after, like it was already waiting there ahead, and the magics they meant were those fused object spells. That was the kind of thing Yori could actually spot, and he was zeroing in on it as he looked. He was hunting down the one who'd learned those magic arts, and the guild leader had warned him that this kind of thing was. What he wanted was out there somewhere, hidden deep in the forest. But until Eros got a little fed up and annoyed, he realized chasing that kind of useless stuff wasn't getting him anywhere. He couldn't wrap his head around why anyone would creep around a place this strange, and that woman's defensive act screamed not a good person. Then right then, they finally spotted the house to confirm it all, and someone ended up talking to them from there mid-conversation. They get on the radio and shout that they've finally arrived, now they can talk face to face. Right then, Eros feels it. Someone's watching them, and it's weirdly connected to the magical artifact because it's giving off pure "this is gonna be awesome" energy. Eros blurts that they trained hard and yeah, they've got experience. The magical armor suddenly shows up right in front of them, spooks itself like it's terrified, and then it slams into the two with a fierce attack. Eros fires off his manipulation codes to pin down exactly what's going on, because the panel demands proof. Eros, if he's going to dump all of that at once, just says yes. He's fine using base 64, and when the armor goes on the attack, Eros grabs the sword in his own hand. He still doesn't get what's happening, but before long he snaps that he'll boost his proof, then he barrels in with his defense attacks and slams the armor right back at them. Ah. You can't help but wonder where the hell was Eros and how's he holding up. He kept doing that until the Eros finally forced him to promise he'd talk with the woman if she agreed to share their thoughts on mysterious gems, but the woman wouldn't let it go. She needed to figure out what was actually going on with Eros's power, like for real. That was seriously weird. And nobody wanted to touch the subject Eros only said he'd talk about. Once his doubts vanished, they slipped straight into the house. Then the woman snapped, "What's Eros' name?" and he introduced himself. Eros ends up realizing the princess asks them to wait right then, and that's when armor that's still moving shows up. Then a super short woman enters the scene, a magical artisan, and the two of them lock eyes face to face. Her face doesn't even matter. She still blurts out what he was thinking like she can read minds, and now Narrows finally sees the whole situation. She's the best mage that place has ever had. Things get so tense that they finally decide, no running anymore, just talk it out with each other. He ended up picturing her as a little different, but he still had no idea what kind of girl she really was. The girl was 12 and somehow she's still older than her, than Eros was. I couldn't believe they were actually going to run that operation in a place like that. And honestly, it was so perfectly handled. Once the prayers went up around that construction, nothing ever faltered again. She's not just talking, she's twice as powerful as everyone thinks. He keeps bringing up the coolest stuff, then straight up asks what Eros pulled off before, right as he smashes an armor without a single worry about what category it belongs to. Eros finally understands what's going on and the woman leans in like, "You know, I could totally study your body to confirm the classifications for real, but time's running out." So instead, they plop down on the sofa, sip tea, and use it as their quick way to clear every doubt. Myros finally delivers the mysterious crystal and can't help but ask what's going on. She tells him she gets it, and that it looks like something was definitely brought into being. Right there, it all clicked into place. Then the girl froze with fear and realized wolves had sprung up everywhere around them. Eros calmly cut down all 4 wolves, then demanded answers. What the hell just happened? The woman snaps that he's brutally powerful and warns he might end up denying that exact line. So he decides to break down how he analyzes those gems a little right now. She can't even begin to make sense of something like that, and he just steamrolled every single understanding she thought she had. She didn't get it at all, nobody could crack that situation, and then she hits them with it. The promise wasn't just words, it woke up as time passed asterisk, and it forged a. He churned out this whole pile of magical energy, and that power immediately spat out monsters all around, yeah, even making them was cut off way too. They saw something totally different from the CG, and right then they decided to verify it. Maybe it's a god-made relic, so the moment it catches the light it blasts into a fierce glow, and everyone turns around demanding what is it. A screen blossoms across Ero's face. Mission complete, God's blessing received, and the countdown is finally starting. Then a brutal headache hits and soon. Before long, Eros finally clocks it. He's been teleporting this whole time. Teleport, bam! He lands in a new place right in front of a woman and a man, and then the man blurts out, "I'd assume." The woman insists they can't shrug off destiny, because the first holy sword demands it, and she says humans are totally, completely unable to ignore that fate. Not possible to just toss destiny aside when they've got nothing else. She had nothing, and it showed. Famous as the goddess of fairy tales, right there in the spotlight. Then right after that, she drops a bombshell, talking about a reincarnated mage, a total taboo in their world. But the real twist is, here's the thing, he could steal confidence from his first generation, and then it all came from the first. First holy swordsman suddenly starts talking about his descendants and hits them with the truth. Everyone shares the same blood, so they should all wield the same power. He breaks it down like a power dial, talking about cheat code operations to unlock a personal boost. Then insists the real key is emotional maturity, because right after that moment, everything has to grow spiritually as a person and even as a family, yet nobody has any clue what kind of response will hit them. Consonability could be the holy swordsman's title. The goddess is staring at Eros, and as soon as he hears it, fear hits him hard like he blurts out, "More than 1,000." 1,000 years later, her descendants would stumble into a scene like that, only to have no idea what her name even was. Lost in there, the goddess gets totally confused and Eros shoots, "Can you see me?" But there's no answer at all. Guess he's just being shown in there for now. In the image, soon as it happens, the goddess clutches the picture of Eros and declares he's her son. And yeah, it's clear he's been fighting his own battles, but the way it's headed, he's sure to crush the hopes of everyone around him, so he needs to remember what is most important to anyone because he's stronger than everyone else. There was one more thing the descendant desperately wanted to say, so he blurted it out, like he couldn't hold it in anymore, saying that he. And that's how Eros ended up in tears, so people will always treat him like the most merciful soul around. Even the goddess reassures him that Eros will be okay. Then Eros finally gets it all and understands what was really going on. He praised everyone as incredible, then said they were the kind of path Eros should follow from afar, Right then, time was already racing, and they told the crowd to wish him luck, insisting no one needed to panic because they were all children of the same blood. And then they told the descendant that he must never let idiots fool him. Not long after, Eros jolts awake, demands where they are, and the princess answers. He asks if he's okay, and yeah, after that hug, they just cry it out for a second like it all finally hit. But something weird is still going on, and that it was nothing, coincidence drags them straight into the next thing. They act like everything is perfectly fine in that dimension, but the truth is, nobody has a clue what actually happened in the first place. A gem left by God gleamed like pure elegance, and the books around it practically screamed for magic. So he snatched the phone, ready to call the people. Something was definitely off, like the air itself had shifted. The magic tells her she'll run to Eros right away, and seconds later she blurts that an emergency is going down. Then she realizes Dudley has showed up in the village. He burst into the village to see Eros, but her servant was totally wrecked. Then Eros shot off to save her, only to realize the holy guy was pure evil, and that sight instantly set him off. And somehow he's right there, arriving in the village, while Eros' woman gets snatched up again. So they push for answers on where Eros vanished, and right then the maid blurts out, Eros is incredible no matter how. How insanely strong Dudley is, because her real master will always be Eros, and it's all about enro. Eros suddenly shows up, throws himself in the way to stop the attack, then barrels forward to defend Dudley's strike, demanding answers to what? Eros finally snaps, so what are you doing here, Dudley? And the question hangs in the air as the story cuts off mid-sentence. That place was no home for someone like him, too much power, too much danger. The man's fear flipped into pure rage, and Eros suddenly felt his power shift. His hands started to tremble, and just as he froze, Eros ripped the sword free and hurled it away, power surging as he admitted it hurt. Eros looked up and said, the maid's like, of course I'm fine, and right after that she says yes, no hesitation. After that, she finally stops worrying, then she leans in and tells Eros, I love you. Dudley's irritation flares up. He snaps that there's always someone who endured more, insists he's always been the holy blade, and declares, I am one. Eros grumbled the same thing again, that the swordsman was better, and pushed for him to decide everything, until he snapped into irritation right after the princess finally showed up, saying worms were what. So he ended up sneaking into the old house that once belonged to her own mother. Like a haunting vision they'd lost everything else for. He refused to release Eros, especially after the princess snapped at him to get out. Eros finally breaks into a grin, while Dudley's just not smiling at all. She's totally lost for what to do, so she tells him, just this one last time, to leave, and right after that people start hurling stones at Dudley, shouting for everyone to stop insulting Eros, because they're all there for Eros anyway. After everything they've been through, they suddenly find themselves tangled in one controversy after another, all while chasing something holy. Ends up sprinting away from there, totally clueless about what just happened, while Eros sours into pure excitement for everyone, and the holy swordsman finally comes back. Morning broke and he grabbed his sword, then out of nowhere Leon showed up, Eros' father, who no one dared act inappropriately around. Besides that, the princess should accept the apologies his son made, because Leon's reputation was about to be dragged through the mud. It was rotting badly, and on top of that they were stuffing it with ugly, terrible behavior. Yeah, the whole situation was falling apart, and the father choked out an apology, admitting it was his fault, his words aimed at his own son. Eros finally clocks that it wasn't a real apology at all, and then Leon shows up so rarely for everyone and said if it keeps going like this, right then the family. Dudley had no chance, one more second and he'd perish. No words left to apologize. Os snaps, how did you two end up here? And he says it hasn't been long since he'd last seen their faces. Leon finally gets Eros alone and tells him, apparently he's been crushing it during the Salvation Feast, and that everyone was buzzing out of their minds to hear about something like that. But it had been forever since any medium-class adventurers came near him. He'd grown enough to earn praise from his superiors. And then the kids got pulled in too, all shouting that Eros was the only one who saved everyone at once. And after that, he didn't. He didn't get it, so he fired the question at the kids, is Eros the savior of everyone? Then slammed the point home, it doesn't matter, that there's no way this can ever happen. Eros then steps in and tells everyone to get out of there. No one stays for this kind of thing. They start freaking everyone out, and right when it peaks, Leon steps in and says, as he was saying it, that's when it hit, there was a message meant for Eros. And after that, the real chaos was already locked in. Just a week from now, an arena battle would ignite with a duel between Eros and Dudley, so everyone had better brace themselves, because Eros still couldn't figure out why a duel. Dudley's duel was in full swing, and in the capital, trouble was exploding everywhere, problems piling up nonstop. Besides, and after a while, nobody wanted to touch that kind of nightmare anymore. Until Eros showed up, grinned, and got weirdly excited, saying maybe there's a spot for him, and if you give him the chance, he'll take it. The proposal, Leon lights up at it. The princess snaps that he must not get it all wrong and Eros won't go down. At least that's how it goes, type it out, even if you're using Panda X. And before you know it, everyone finally gets it. Compensation, Leon just can't wrap his head around what it all means. What was going on, like a whole year crammed into one moment. Money for Eros had to be paid, because if they did, they'd get to stay in the castle for a long time, since nobody really understood what was going on and Dudley said that. That whole situation was just plain unfair. Then they decided to run, and somehow nobody even explains why there's a problem in the first place. Problem always there, and the second one hits him even harder, so yeah, he's cornered. Leon's stuck in his head like, was it hers or not? Because anyone who claims that clearly doesn't understand the mess they're walking into. So he decides they should talk a little more to push the duel even further. Then he leaves, and that plan sits there for a full week with Eros waiting. Eros decides he's going to get ready to fight, and the countdown starting now with the bout set for 1 week from today suddenly has everyone buzzing. The adventurer shrugs and claims he's the true holy sword, telling Eros not to be intimidated. Eros nods, thanks him, and says the opponent might be terrifyingly strong, then she cuts in and says. At the end of the duel, he throws out a wild maybe we can go together, but Eros snaps back. Then the princess steps right in, blocking the way, and says that. Now there's no way that happens. After the fight, it's her who's landing the date with Eros, you got that. The guild chief leans in and says, being this popular is going to make it hard, because an adventurer like you is going to get shot at non-stop with arrows. A man watches it all unfold, and then Eros hits so close to the first holy, it's like the past is calling him back. No matter how insane his talent was, the sword stayed right at his side, always waiting like it owned him. That was seriously terrifying for the Eros, so if anything was wrong, he could just talk to him. So the two of them started chatting, and right as the maid arrived, she blurted that Eros was. She was someone huge, and now together, they could finally push forward because she'd always be there for him. Be this person with huge expectations by his side. Then the princess snaps in fury, 3 days drag by, and everything starts to unravel for everyone who tries to get answers. Eros went full beast in training, totally locked in his power, kept surging stronger and stronger, and then a brand new mysterious power showed up. Absorption, where the very force he swallowed could boost his strength even more, and the terrifying part. He had no clue how it even worked, he just didn't know. Maybe later they'll dig into all of it at once and get to the bottom of those mysteries, because those requests are only the start. The requests felt weird as hell, and for the first time he was finally starting to take control of his own life. Life in the village was finally calm, until the princess's shadow steps in, offering an opportunity attack, and Eros dodges like it's instinct. She presses him, asking why he always pulls moves like that, and right then Eros slips right behind the princess and blows a cool breath against her sensitive ear. The ear hits and she erupts into screams, shouting that it's way too unfair. Then Eros declares that everyone was never the same person at all. He leans in and fires the question at the princess. What on earth she wants right then he slips in, can I see a little glimpse? And just like that, the princess unfurls a paper packed with words that Ero wrote. He'll push through all of it, no doubt, then he blurts, what was that? And the princess leans in and tells him it was a request. Everyone in the village stepped up and wrote back, because every single person was ready to give him everything they could. So he's bursting with excitement. Then bam, that arrow gets him a kiss on the cheek, and the princess shoots back that she caw. She didn't think she could do much from where she stood, so she just kept cheering for Eros, thanking the prince as she did it. Princess tells him, if you lose, I'll never forgive you, and Eros is forced to. They'd never lose, and right after that, they charge into the decisive showdown in the royal capital, where Dudley and Eros lock eyes across the battlefield. Everyone fires off wishes and prayers for Dudley, and everyone also throws good luck at Eros, because Dudley's been training all week, and now he's dead set on making Eros lose that battle. But while everyone begged Dudley to finish Eros, he flipped the script. He went and asked Eros to. Eros wanted to spit out some kind of line, but it felt wrong, so he shut it down, and suddenly he wasn't funny anymore. Then he clocked that weird smell, and he couldn't even remember if the family style was any closer to this, like his mind was getting scrambled by it. Powerful Eros barks that he shouldn't waste time saying necessary stuff and tells him to start the fight. And just moments later a knight shows up, announcing the duel is about to ignite. Then with everything finally locked in place, the duel begins. Dudley charges forward. Eros charges at Dudley and Dudley charges back. So when Dudley goes for his strike, Eros slips the hit like it never mattered and unloads a counterattack once and for all. Alright, when Dudley gets launched like that, panic hits everyone in an instant. But then Leon spots what Eros was doing at that hour, and the moment he realizes it, Dudley hits the ground on his feet, blurts out that this can't just be some cheap joke, and demands to know what Eros just pulled off. Because that holy style traces back to the first holy swordsman, and Dudley refuses to buy the hype, so he charges in again to strike. Dudley countered the attack, and that's when he realized his sword was way too close and shining fast. Eros barely had time to react, and several attacks came flying in. But Dudley couldn't help blurting, asking what Eros was thinking right then, and at that very moment Dudley snaps into furious rage, hurling curses at Eros and swearing he can't defend himself. So Eros fires back that he only does that kind of thing for a reason. Eros just grinds out the same outcome. Nothing gets truly serious in that fight until Dudley finally starts to turn the heat. To drain me, so Eros just snaps a full power kick with everything he's got. And Dudley gets blindsided and crashes to the ground, knowing stuff like that can happen, and everybody starts blurting out that this situation is. Things are spiraling fast. Now Eros grabs Dudley and demands he get. At that exact moment, Eros snaps up and goes full serious. Then Dudley blurts, "What was Eros saying?" But it's late, Dudley's already maxed out, so he cuts himself off and says. With the impossible finally cracking open, the princess erupts in excitement, and right then everyone starts cheering as the celebration erupts. Eros. He thinks it's finally over and everything's fine. Then out of nowhere, his body turns dead weight and he crashes to the ground. At that exact moment, a chunk of obsidian dropped out of his pocket and hit the ground with a dark little thud. A chunk of stone glared with an insane, blinding light. It was the exact same phenomenon, just unleashed through magic. That magic wasn't leaking out of Dudley at all. It was pouring in from somewhere else, and the source was Leon, who screams at Dudley to get it done as fast as he can. Leon soon. Leon blurts that Eros has been crushed by Dudley's powers. Then right then and there, Eros suddenly starts remembering the rule banned any outside magic, so everyone. Leon slowly started to realize what was going on, because the fight was already over, yet Eros felt off, and Leon had gone completely unrecognizable. But then, now he realizes the situation was way worse. This stone might actually trigger a power that forms a crushing pile of energy around them. And now that power could spit out monsters for real. Eros begs Leon to stop it, because if that happens, everyone's doomed, but Leon couldn't care less. He keeps pushing forward anyway. Dudley snaps upright, saying he'll finish Eros because rage burned in him. He hated having to lose to him. The stone finally summons a giant monster and the whole crowd erupts in panic. Then Dudley yells, "What was that?" An attack rockets straight toward him, and Dudley hurls it with brutal force into the wall, while the audience starts to worry about what comes next. They're fleeing and demanding answers. Why on earth did Leon pull something like that? Now that Eros finally got to move, he clocked it. Those mages weren't any different. And suddenly he realized just how much deadlier this place was, because he'd never seen power like this before. Previously, everyone froze in place, and somehow that pause turned into a real, undeniable event. Eros felt a jolt in his chest when he realized she was right beside him, only to remember the goddess was never truly there, just a fading memory. That says they finally met. She's frozen time for a quick joke right in this exact moment. Eros blurts out, "So what's going on right now?" And his abilities keep leveling up like crazy, so she can do far more than that, because yeah, she's God, and that means she can do anything. She turns to the monster and growls, "So you were just a lonely shadow, an ancient wanderer from thousands of years ago drifted through the realms, and she wasn't like any modern monster at all." Until she finally told Eros he could win, but he's gonna need her help or this never ends. So he'll smash the kingdom's crushing chains and finally free everyone, and she presses a kiss on Eros. Cheek blurts out that she believes he's the real holy swordsman, and now he's thrown into confusion because they're running out of time and falling behind. Now's the perfect moment to hit the shadow with absorption. He'd never even tried that kind of power before, and later it turns out it won't work, not at all. Plus, the goddess reminds Eros not to forget he can rewrite everyone's ability power and slash their attacks. So yeah, Eros is going to win after she says it. She's all in on Eros, so the shadow snaps into a furious scream. Time jerks back to normal. Now Eros stares at the mess like, "What do I do next?" He slashes the monster's attack and the stones surge straight for the people, until he turns the whole thing into an absorption trap, and the stones surged back toward Eros, and then he snapped into a ruthless counter, blasting every last one at once. That power pulled every attack straight toward him, but Eros didn't even realize it. In a straight-up one-on-one showdown, everyone clocks that Eros is shielding them, so he yells for everyone to scatter. He'll handle the threat. While the crowd praises how cool he is, not realizing they have zero clue how strong his opponent really is. And he has no idea if he'll survive it, but for now, at least until everyone. Eros doesn't just bring monsters. He brings a fight that leaves no room to breathe, and everyone's expectations are crashing down on him at once. So the guild chief, the princess, and two other adventurers step in together and enter the battle with Eros, teaming up so they can all come out on top. Win together, because this time, nobody's lining up to be rescued, and they're not about to dump a massive burden back on Eros. And yep, Eros' mess is tied to the guild chief's too. After he thanks everyone, he suddenly realizes things are way more dangerous, and he can finally reduce it. He slashed the monster's attack even further. And after rewriting it, he could do the same with everyone's power, while the people watched, stunned, and demanded to know what was happening. So Eros reveals it. He quadrupled everyone's power, and yeah, it fits because this guy is way more than just strong. The princess drops it like a truth bomb. That was her Eros. Yeah, he's not just some random guy anymore. He's a holy swordsman, so they need to march in and crush that monster once and for all. But the second Leon sees it all, irritation flares up fast because his holy swordsman instincts scream at him to brace himself. The monster is way more than he expected. But here's the crazy part, Eros and his crew were still going toe-to-toe at that exact moment. The hits could have been devastating, yet once they clocked that Dudley's defeat would stain the family name, they refused to back down and pushed ahead. He lunges at the monster to strike first, but it snaps back, smacks him down, hurls him into the wall, and just as Dudley crashes to the ground, he blacks out. That's when Eros just goes full beast mode, smashing every threat at once, swallowing attack after attack, and the guild chief realizes now's the moment. I can strike once and finally end it all. It slammed the monster's leg, ripping it up as it started to pile on power. And before long they were begging Eros for a plan, only for him to shout a warning. Hit the same foot, the same leg, or they'd waste their strikes. Then the monster finally crashes down, and even Eros tells them to hold on a little longer. Because once the princess's moves get sealed, she's forced to unleash holy magic. Next, Eros surges forward and ends it for good, slashing in with the phoenix sword using the first form. Sword, so when Eros finally senses it, he snaps his eyes open and realizes he's trapped in a totally blinding white void. Goddess stayed right beside him and Eros blurted out, "What's going on?" She said that ever since the monster fell, everyone's strength surged a little, and that means. Right next to Eros, the real holy sword finally shows up, like the universe just cracked open the secret. It's their first face-to-face moment and the pleasure is all theirs, once and for all. Then an ancestor of Eros steps in and says, he doesn't need to be all stiff and super formal. So yeah, they're family by blood, which means they're supposed to talk freely, but the goddesses talk about the legendary swordsman and all that weird, that kind of thing started to feel off, so he decided to compare notes. He had plenty of other things too. They should start with Eros, praise the right place to stand, and admit how thrilled he was to realize he's a true descendant, a real swordsman, but it wasn't only that. Eros didn't just win because of his power, surrounded by adventurers and the princess herself. He stayed so humble he even planned to be. From here on out, Eros would only keep getting stronger. Then the ancestor leaned in and said he wanted Eros to go even further. Get strong enough to stop the disaster bearing down on them, because the only reason they walked away was to save them. The memories weren't there for comfort. They were there to forge him for the disaster on the way, the exact kind of reincarnation technique that makes reality flip. He's using some kind of technique like that, and that's why everyone's got to pay attention to his Eros, because he's the one who. Eros is the only one who can take on that whole mess. Sure, the scale is massive enough to make your head spin, but everyone's buzzing because Eros swore he'll wipe out those monsters that have been terrorizing them. With all those powers in play, Eros suddenly takes control of the whole mess. Then everything snaps back to normal, and he realizes they finally pulled off the win. The crowd surged back into the battlefield, buzzing with excitement because Eros had protected them. Then Leon stepped forward, grinning as he said, "This was all expected." Leon's words hit hard. He'd always known his son was a real swordsman, that he needed to come back to the family he came from, and everyone immediately got fed up with the mistake Leon was calling out. He demands to know why they're acting so strange, because his power is the only thing the family needs, and he's sure he has to go back. Leon says, first off, you've got to treat a crazy strong invitation like this as a real privilege, because you're never going back home again. And when Leon asks why he's talking like that, the holy sword of the family, and he can't quit what he's always dreamed of, because Eros is absolutely bursting with excitement. With various encounters, and because they tossed him out of his own family, he was hammered again and again with Yura. A true sword, so it wasn't about brute strength at all. Who can pour out sincerity and kindness to everyone, so yeah, that's exactly why he could. He couldn't just train his way back into the family. Being expelled had already turned that into a total waste of time, so from here on out, he swears he'll follow the road of the true swordsman just like your ancestors forged the first sword, so it all begins there like it always has. In this house there was nothing left to learn, so he just knelt there and tied his shoe, then decided Leon should never show his face in front of Eros again. Leon told them to wait, because right then the family would step out as a necklace missing iris. Yet he reached for the moment again like it wasn't over. He swears again he'll never go back to that family, so Leon ends up begging for everything he's got, until the princess finally shows up and shuts him down, telling him to learn how to let go. Eros revealed he'd found a successor, the Silver Swordsman, and now he'll be spending nothing but fun days with the prince, the princess, and the people. This was the moment to finally take everything seriously and stare straight at what Leon had done. Boom, it felt like checkmate until the prince showed up and demanded that Leon and he talk alone later that day. And now everyone's wondering what that means for the bond they shared. Leon blurts, "Maybe I was dreaming," as right then the princess finally ends up talking with her brother. The princess blurts that it's been ages since they last saw each other, and then she leans in and says he hasn't changed a bit. At least, that's what the prince does next. Prince refuses to accept that either. He insists the way she's leaving is for good, that they can't meet again, and then he pushes the point so hard that now they can finally talk directly with. The princess demands greatness, and from that moment on her royal bloodline rises. Then she lights up and vows to accept it, urging her brother to protect his health because she won't let him risk going blind. One day he finally realized the lesson, and from then on he'd be careful for real. Soon after that, inside the battle waiting room, Eros was completely worn out, but he couldn't stop himself from staring at the abilities that had just appeared. He popped in after the minimum invisibility window called up his ancestral weapon. But then he had to bide his time, and only later did he slip back into the city, where everyone was already packed in and talking. Mary stood there waiting for Eros to smash Dudley and save every spectator. Because the moment he stepped forward, he looked fearless, and the only words anyone could throw at him were, "Thank you." Stopping to think about how the two of them could finally slip out together that night, but the princess. The adventurer jumps in and blurts, "You can't stop us like that." And when the fight ends up sounding so great, they just keep talking about how awesome that battle was but just as they're about to slip out together, the princess barges in again. "No, that can't happen," and declares that from now on you'll have to ask. Ask Eros what he plans to do next. Will he stay in the village for a bit so the people won't panic? So the truth, Eros didn't just want to be there. They wanted to stay, living in peace forever. Eros didn't have many options, but if he could pull together everyone's help to become a brand new adventurer, then it'd be fine. At least that's what the guild chief asks, right? What Eroas was saying, if he meant it, and he's already a legit resident of the village, then yeah, nobody's getting to stop that. Denies it, but everyone still blurts, "So you're in, tell us, do you wanna?" He could stay forever, and once everyone heard the kids wanted to marry Eros, the whole crowd exploded with excitement. For that kind of thing, soon the princess grabs Eros tight, asking if he really was happy he showed up in that village. And of course her rivals explode with rage, so a whole week slips by after the duel and then someone. Eros ended up showing up and asked to demonstrate right in front of his house. Those calm days made Leon stand there, cool as a stone, and before long Eros shot him a question. "What do you want?" Right when it looked like he'd just passed by, he demanded an answer from Eros, because he refused to accept what happened in that duel, and that still wasn't the end. But right in the middle of everything, Leon flashed an ability that could slide right past the Holy Swordsman. Yet Eros shot back, furious, claiming Leon was cheating, even though nothing else would have made a single bit of sense. Leon rushes in, sword ready, to force Eros to battle the two right here. Because Eros realizes Leon wasn't trying to prove anything, he was just trying to twist the story and claim Eros was cheating, and the way Leon loves his. Just like that, Leon got swallowed by the forgetting. Then Eros showed up to confront him, shouting that people were spreading wild rumors in his name, only for him to insist, "None of it was my doing." Work this, Eros shrugs. Honestly, he doesn't care even a tiny bit. The family already has a bunch of assistants, so this shouldn't be an issue at all. Sure, they spent it, but he's convinced he only wanted to restore their honor, and Eros cuts in like, "If you have to go that far, then it's fine." Then boom, maybe they'd finally get that duel after all. Right then, a voice snaps from behind the Eros telling him to hold back, and stepping in is the first holy swordsman, someone they haven't seen in ages. And he rushes to apologize for showing up like that, but he insists he couldn't stand by and let anything like that happen. Leon's stomach dropped when he realized the first holy swordsman was standing right there. He couldn't even process it, like his mind refused to believe. Still, meeting them for the first time felt unreal. This guy didn't just chase power, he was blinded by it, swallowed whole by greed. And either way, this was also the first holy sword. A swordsman's duty is everything. Protect the blade's true talent, and carry a pure heart so you can draw the right sword, so they have to. It looked like they were about to cram in even more lessons, because the current holy swordsman had to go all in with everything he'd got, and Leon couldn't bring himself to believe it. Eros shrugs and says, "Yeah, it'll be a good duel," and then Leon snaps his sword up, like it was always meant to happen, simple as that. Just like everyone feared would happen, Leon charges forward with everything he's got, and the first holy swordsman steps in unarmed, claiming none of it is necessary. The swordsman swings in, and that's when the first holy swordsman stops Leon cold, pinning his blade with just one finger. He fires off one final question, "Is that really all you've got?" And when Leon hears it, he explodes into a full-on assault, but every single strike gets blocked with one finger, and the first holy swordsman finally spots a crack in the defense. Leon lunges in with everything he's got, driving into the holy swordsman's neck and hurling him back, just as the first holy swordsman finally shows up. It sits right on top of Leon's head and Leon's like, I don't get what's happening at all. While Eros lets out a small, amused laugh totally entertained by the chaos. And that's when the first holy swordsman cracked a joke. He said he finally got what someone like him, with someone on the level of Eros, would understand. So he tells him to train from the very start, and the first holy swordsman starts to vanish. Until right in that moment, he explodes in with a surprise attack on Leon, knocking him down and crashing him into the ground. So maybe this was the end, like every problem finally vanished. Then Leon bolted out of the village and the princess snapped with pure irritation. Ever since Dudley and Leon rode out of the royal capital, it's been a long time, so long that even their family house is gone too, and now it hits. Maybe they've been paying for this from the very start, the first holy swordsman. He's like, yeah, that was a lesson you've got to learn, but then he blurts, time's running out and if. But if their suspicions are right, something is about to go down. Eros demands to know what. And the first guy snaps that it's nothing major, then immediately backtracks, apologizing because too many things could explode from this. They could talk about it for days, but somehow there was never enough time, because in the end they always tried to help. That's it now. If he's remembering right, he was the only one sending so much distance is separating them, and that gap is just getting bigger. Before long he blurts out, can I, and asks if he could give / a discount for Eros. If he doesn't notice things are going nowhere and the deal's already over, then maybe. Now's the moment. Calamity is about to crash in. And he didn't just mean sword skills. He wanted him strong in his heart too, because he truly believed in him, and he'd prove that he's the one. Only Eros could lift the whole team's spirits, and once he stepped in, he'd become the real swordsman. A few days later, they were deep in the forest, training their guts out, because Eros was determined to level up his adventurer classification. In the middle of the path, he slammed down a monster and sealed it with one impossible move, because from then on, the arrows didn't just hit, they ended it for good. Then before they even got started, Eros flipped out. New abilities had just shown up, and right after that they push forward and keep fighting a little longer because they're not done yet. They're still locked in. Because the road's too long and the arrows would have to stretch even further just to make it happen. He pushed himself even further, stronger than ever, and before long he finally laid out what he meant. He breaks it down and then he gains a brand new power because he turns into an invincible for the next 5 seconds. Until they realize nobody else can stand up to Eros, so they keep pushing forward. Their adventure, it seems like arrows fly the moment it starts. He'll be bumped up to a higher rank. So yeah, they kept insisting everything was exceptional, and then Iro finally said. And that's when it all snapped into focus and yanked his attention right then. Someone yells for help and he snaps into action, bolting straight to figure out what was going on, then immediately once they noticed. Spotting a kid standing there totally. They demanded to know what could have happened to him, and then they spotted the mark. He spots a nasty mark on her arm, looks like it was left by slavery, and right then he realizes the truth. They're about to start dealing with the people who own others. Slaves were getting way too risky now, and on top of that, a wealthy family nearby kept several slaves like they were nothing. And it looked like things were about to tip into true chaos, danger levels through the roof. They brag that their family territory is so huge, it stretches all the way near. Near the village, she said it was crawling with corrupt people, and then the child begs for forgiveness, swearing she will. She swore she'd never pull a stunt like that again, no way she'd ever manage it. Then he leans in and says, I can help that child just once and for all, and right then he snaps, it's okay, so he grabs it and picks up. He scoops the child into his arms and strides her toward his home, then after that's when he swore he'd protect that child. Because he told you, as an adventurer, it's their job to guard kids like they're the whole world. Kids, right then, the adventurer lined in and says it's fine, and just like that, they walk out together to find out what really went down. Then the poor kid, stuck in all that chaos, finally blurts out an apology and begs for forgiveness, right up until they reach home. She curls up in the bed and falls asleep so peacefully that it's like the princess magic fixed her in that 1 hour, and for a moment it looks like everything is, starting to get worse. The pressure kept ramping up on the princess too, so right then they had to think. Something horrible must have happened to her because the girl's injuries kept getting worse by the second. The princess can't stop wondering what could have gone down there, and that dread snaps the girl awake, terrified, spiraling in her thoughts. Then Iris rushes up and asks if she's okay, and the girl blurts out fast. She drops to her knees, apologizing, and says she'll start cooking now. Then Eros cuts in. He tells her to cool off because she can't go doing stuff like that around here, and that's when he finally introduces himself. Just a beginner adventurer. She snaps into the middle of it, and before long he's there, ready to protect her, apologizing as he promises she'll always answer her call. Ero warned them she'd cause trouble for anyone who isn't her, then leaned in and demanded, so what's your name? His name, yeah, it's Emo. So don't stress, none of this is a battle between enemies. Turns out they're real friends, and they swear they're fighting on the same side. She pauses, thinking hard about it, then blurts out, "So will I get." He got beaten, arrows flew in anyway, and when it all said no, he just figured that meant it was fine. They all repeat the same thing about her arrows, and then act like everything could have turned out differently. He changes his mind, promises he'll protect her, and it's enough. She starts crying and throws her arms around arrows, and then he can't stop thinking about what she's been through. Fast without even properly. Caught up in the chaos, she finally blurts out an apology, telling him they met and she just couldn't stop herself. When Enro says it's alright, you know you don't have to stress about stuff like that. And after a while, after they finally let every emotion out, they start wrestling with one terrifying question. What they? Heroes wouldn't let those things stay like that. So this is what they could be doing right now, and that's exactly where she's headed. She tore away from her owner because he was a downright monster. Those records said she kept a room for everyone, and if that ever got out, trouble would swallow the whole place. Arrow said it was all right that nothing like that could happen. Then Mary bursts in, breathless, swearing it's all okay, and nobody followed her, right after she says Eros's name. And Dudley, when the slave girl spits that out, it even sparks a huge commotion back in her own house, like she's trying to distance herself from what's going on. Later, Eros finally steps in and demands to know what happened because he heard he'd already beaten Dudley. Dudley, she tells him everything was incredible, even though he was. He got tossed out of the main family, but somehow he still crushed the silver skates, and he really did walk away like it was all done. So then, what kind of nightmare was the girl stuck in? She's been craving the moment to tell Eros, so she drops to her knees, waiting right there for him. Then Ero drops the truth and says it was. It's honestly fine, she didn't have to do something like that. She still hadn't fully recovered, and later, the girl ends up clutching Arrow's hand and holding on tight, saying. She was buzzing with excitement for something like that, but now, Eros wouldn't let her out of his sight, not for a second. And later, he bluntly asks her if she can stay at his place, because right now, she's been dying to ask him for a favor from Eros, so they could cut straight in and tell her exactly what was happening, because the princess seethed at the kid's every word, convinced he was flirting with the protagonist. That night, they decided to whip up a bigger dish for everyone, and just like that, the crowd dug in and started eating. The girl finally stood up, nodded like it was destiny, and promised she'd always serve the food. For now, Mary says everyone should just go and have the time of their lives, because she always has. I've always wanted her to take a bite, because if she doesn't, she'll just start crying nonstop. If she refuses to eat, Eros steps in and fires off the question, what kind of? Something was going on that made it clear she had to stop waiting for other people. She insists they all need to eat together, but now she claims she's not hungry. Then her stomach betrays her with a loud, growling roar. And somehow she ends up blushing with pure embarrassment. So Ero tells her it's totally fine. She can pull up a chair, sit at the table, and dig in. She ate, then the girl slid into her seat and asked, was everything okay? She grabbed the sandwich, took one bite, and immediately broke down, crying hard because it tasted so incredible. Mary leaned in and told her, don't hold back. Later on, they realize they've lost track of everything. Then they beam with gratitude and thank everyone for the food they were eating right then. Soon at that same place, they quiz the girl, did you eat a ton at that house of yours? She shoots them down, and somehow the horses still stuff themselves like there's no tomorrow, even worse than the slaves. Eros tells himself he can't leave the girl, even though the food is still simple, and honestly it's downright terrible. She stumbled back to that awful place again, and the house always felt rotten the moment she stepped inside. And the danger of stirring up trouble for every village only got worse, because if the holy swordsman declared it, then that was it, no question. It has to be true because that's exactly what Ero was the move he should have made, and right after that, Ero stepped in. I wake up at Ero's place, empty rooms everywhere, like there's nothing left to live for. Soon, she smiles and tells me it's fine that I can stay together with Eros. Heroes, so everyone finally gives in, agreeing that they could all return calmly. So the girl trudges off to her bed and finally falls asleep in peace, while Eros and the princess stay planted at the table, chatting about whatever was coming next. It was hard to wrap your head around, like there was no way something that wild could really be happening. And her lord, smart as they come, still keeps a slave system running inside his own home, and that kind of cruelty is flat out impossible. And it had to happen fast. Eros was desperate to strike back, but the princess cut him off and she'd go talk to that guy about it, and if she breaks down Emu's royal performance, everything should finally click. Right then, they hear Emu start talking, begging for. She asked for forgiveness for every scheme she'd pulled, and because of that, Eros was tossed into the mix. Before he even realized it, he was seconds from hearing it for himself. He feels that presence, and suddenly Eros can't stand it because it's driving him up the wall. Irritation flares, then the princess leans in and asks what just happened, and there's an arrow. Garros tells her to hold up and warns that trouble's already nearby, set loose by someone causing chaos. Then, after a bit, he reassures her that it should be fine, no matter how the problems stack up. It's a total problem. Once this all works out, they've got to sprint to the guild right away, and Arrows bolts off the moment it happens. He's basically saying, I'll always keep my eyes on my opponents like this. And the instant that movement kicks in, you can feel it. He's got unfinished business and he's ready to settle it. And yeah, everything finally clicked for Eros as he sprinted through the forest, scanning every twist of emotion flooding him in real time, until just moments later, he spots several. Eros spots a bunch of runners ahead, and the moment he recognizes them, he snaps into a faster sprint. Because those figures are from the Salvation League, the same group he crushed earlier. He spots the Salvation crew, yeah, the very same guys he already wiped out before. And it looks like they were about to come back, right after Iro took control of it. One of their groups, and boom, rumors started flying, popping up in brand new places, growing like wildfire. It sounds like a real organization, and maybe the king's trying to strike back at Iro's, but he's not about to let it all go down. The moment the people clocked that Iro's tailing them, they panicked and bolted for their lives. Sprint harder, he swore Iro's couldn't catch up, but the truth hit them fast. Iro's was actually keeping pace perfectly. Iro gets shoved toward a spot near the family mansion, and he can't shake the feeling that something big is about to go down, so he starts asking what's happening, and the people finally start talking. They say that the fight didn't just end, it turned into something way worse, and they're still double-checking the Holy of the Swordsman on purpose, because it's seriously exceptional, and then they start talking about the arrows. He started talking about the Sword Center, and then, just like before, he admitted they couldn't be totally sure he wasn't just some insanely complicated man, the kind you can't ever quite figure out, but he's still got. He can wipe out every last shadow, but none of it holds a candle to Eros, because he's being used like nothing more than artificial ammunition. Eros demands, "Are you sure?" And then he presses, "What kind of serious artificial thing?" But somehow the talk keeps slipping right back to the man who was standing right there beside them. Why? Because they had to keep the experiment rolling, at the very least, to drag back the only person who was there with Eros. If they could prove the artificial connection, they'd crash the village next to confirm what was really going on, and Eros can't believe. Those families started stepping in, but he didn't back down. He surged forward, moving before anything could happen, and blindsided the guy from behind, crashing into him. So he realizes his life is slipping away a tiny bit. Yeah, the arrow's obvious. Arrows won't end it all, so he charges toward the other two, saying, "I'm not. Isn't the holy of the sword at all. It doesn't come anywhere close to being complete. Is no longer inside the family, and right in the middle of all that chaos. Demanding to know what their real goal was for getting so tangled up with the family that stood there. Everyone wanted Eros dead, and right then Eros barreled forward toward him. Except the guy keeps trying to block it. He wants to attack, but he can't, not with a situation like this. Eros surges ahead stronger than ever and ends up claiming the bigger win. Then it hit right in that moment, and they still couldn't figure out why something like that was happening. So Eros ties up the three and goes to work, testing his moves, because deep down he knows taking on all three is going to be brutal. But right then he had to wait. Eros snapped into action, unleashed his power to summon the enemy, and when they appeared, the attack was just getting started. A bizarre ancestral weapon, plus this iron-headed monster surfaces, and before long Eros gets crowned as the master. Then he leans in and drops a small favor for that little boy, asking if he can take. Grab the three guys who were there. When the boy lifts two metal bars, he takes two men and Eros grabs the last one. Right then, panic hits them as they race through what could have happened. And the robot blurts out that he'll be there by chance whenever Eros needs him. Then Eros tells him he can count on him from now on, and right after that. Words, yeah, everything was fine until that exact moment when Eros, Charles demanded answers. Was stealing meant to disrespect God just because he got lost in those meetings, while the elders barked commands like they owned the word of God. So Eros tells the gods it's fine and even thinks maybe we can team up someday. But not long after, right in the heart of the forest, weird sensations hit him all at once. Then he realizes the air is packed with hordes of monsters. The second he snaps, "I have no choice but to fight." The robot instantly cranks up to combat mode, and Eros just shrugs that it's fine if he transforms into an even bigger battle-ready robber. He jumps into the fight and starts tearing through the battlefield, taking out tons of people. Many times in the heart of the forest, so even if there is. An enemy pulls up, so Ero calls out, telling him to hold off and waits for the exact moment right then and there. So the monster swears it's fine, then admits he wiped out every single thing. Everything hits at once and then boom, everything snaps back to normal mode. Eros clocks that those wolves feel off, like they're missing the vibe of the others nearby, and right after that the monster blurts out. Gary blurts out, "Is something wrong already?" Guaranteed, Eros just orders the robot to battle with his authorization, as long as it keeps doing what he says. Doing that kind of thing, if he keeps going like this, he could blow up into something huge. Major trouble is coming, and right on its heels that robot. The robot smugly claims he serves Eros, and admits he's nowhere near as powerful as him. Right then, Eros snaps, "Stop with that talk, look at your own strength and own it." So the robot snaps, "I get it," like he's already decided he would. Catch everything that's happening in real time. But either way, Eros communication. Confidence hit in more ways than one. And right after that, people start whispering that communication's gone completely sideways. So they could smooth out every mess. And finally, letters start landing at the guild, spelling out the whole nightmare of what was happening. Trust me, stuff like that really happens, believe it. Arrow blurts out that every single credit goes to the tiny robot, because whoever's really good at this shows up right then. Soon, at that exact hour, the guildmaster snaps, "Were you dreaming?" Because right here in this place, he swears she couldn't be. Arrows cracks it open and tells him the truth. It's an ancient weapon, not something that ever belonged to a human. And just like that, not long after, the robot tells her, "I saved the goddess once ages ago," and right after that, he starts laughing like something finally hit him. But the woman gets totally lost in that moment, and later in the dead of night, they end up talking for hours. That maybe there was a real link between. The truth hit hard, between the family and the Salvation Army, and the girl he calls an artificial human was fighting to see her again. Eros finally blurts out, "So what happened to the members you used to have?" And it looks like they somehow hacked a way out, and then they spread it clean with zero traces left behind. They were right in the middle of it. They were stuck in prison, and out of nowhere, boom, they vanished right in front of the guards, so everything was instantly lost. At that exact hour, a secret was forged and sealed in the dark. Yet when they finally opened it, there was nothing inside. It's possible he's carrying a shadow stone, so the robot snaps, asking if they've... Have you ever come across those shadow stones? Rocks that drip out strange powers like they've got a secret to unleash. Arrows asks if it's the same one he's holding, and the little creature chirps back that, "Yep, it's exactly that," and then the Salvation group steps in. Use it to teleport the monster. But back then, they couldn't get their hands on those stones at all. 1,000 years ago, those stones unleashed the chaos that swallowed everything. Years ago, everything suddenly started ballooning in size, and the Salvation Army was getting ready to receive protection from the celestial feet. Then, just moments later, they rushed to the guildmaster and explained that they already. He got it all in his head, and maybe they really had to face it head-on, because that's exactly what makes arrows click into place. That's the true master swordsman, and right in the middle of it, he declares he'll call on Eros to get a mission that'll track down every last incident and shut them down. Right then, the legendary family showed up to crush the chaos, and Eros swore it was all totally calm. He decides to sleep the moment he wakes up. Then he demands answers, asking why the slave girl was sharing his bed. She suddenly screams his name in her dreams, and he loses it. He's left staring, baffled. What kind of dream could that girl possibly be trapped in? And he can't figure out why This kind of chaos always hits Eros, and right after that, the printing starts. The princess crawls into bed with him too, but neither of them can make heads or tails of the dream. Either way, he backs off and lets it play out, because the second they commit, the two girls are already going at it. Right when Mary walks in, she blurts out, "What happened?" And then, just like that, after a moment, they all wake up. At breakfast, the princess quizzes Eros about why he looks wiped out, but he just shuts down and says nothing. So the princess's questions stick, and Eros starts spiraling over what could have happened. He can't wrap his head around why people call the slave girl artificial. Because the moment he lays eyes on the members locked up in those cells, it all hits different. And maybe it all seems fine for a second, but then it hits him again. Where could an escape even be, and what the last time that girl asks Eros if she's really sure she was that happy because of him, then cuts off mid-sentence. The family's power is downright terrifying, and she's terrified he can't shoulder all that by himself. Then Ero drops the truth. He'll remember, and he'll protect her for all eternity. And the princess promises, "I'll be there whenever you need me," and the girl's tears finally start to spill. She starts to cry, then boom, she's overflowing with joy, telling them she truly believes in those. She de-tossed those words around like they meant nothing, until the day finally showed up and proved she was wrong. And he's grinning so hard it hurts, soaking up the moment like it's pure gold. After that, he knew everything was simple from now on. He just had to leave. Leave with them because everything asterisk could asterisk be done, and that truth felt wickedly good. The girl felt pure joy to have her right by his side. After breakfast, they hit the road and started sweeping through every single one of the plazas were buzzing as the princess trained hard with Eros, and every attack that came flying in got blocked clean. Eros was the head trainer, running the whole adventure class. No one else even came close. Her status as a princess matched his exactly, and her special power, the strongest ability, was insanely good. So valuable because she could take on every attack with ice-calm composure. The princess begged Eros to train her, calling it the perfect way to pass the time. And with this new power he has, duplicating what a target experiences, she's about to grow fast and learn a ton. So yeah, everything Eros had to offer didn't just stop at one power. It unlocked more abilities. Everyone who trained fought right beside him. Then the king stepped in, ready to do whatever it took against Eros, so she snatched up her sword and charged. Eros braced for the girl's attack, blocked every strike, and only then he started to turn the tide against her. Eros snaps with irritation, because the princess is right there with him and yeah, he's actually Eros. Two girls were already done, finished, and Eros stepped back, deciding to wait a little longer. Meanwhile, inside the family mansion, a bloated tyrant lounged with his slaves. Then his temper flared as he snapped, saying, "You started blaring like, hey, she needs to begin right now." He finally started doing that SL. Whatever it was he was meant to do, and the moment it clicked, everything changed. Slave, so he lashes the girl and she storms off, swearing she understands everything. So she rushes straight ahead, and right after, a hooded figure shows up and steps in, saying, terrible things were unfolding, and it was getting worse by the second. He tried to process it. The Salvation Friend roster number that was right there in the middle of it all, and the king couldn't even wrap his head around what he was witnessing. It was coming up behind him and it looked awful. Then he snapped and said something. Something terrible happened. Right then they had to talk. The hooded figure leans in and apologizes for right away, like the words can barely hold back their urgency. For anything that is exactly a pension. And right there the fat man finally blurts out that they found. He was that incredible little fat kid, so he blurts out, "Did you find the emu?" And they go, "Yeah, but." But she had to wait. Right then, looks like she was hidden under the protection of a guy with serious power. No way the fat man could wrap his head around it, not until he finally noticed there was. It's Salvation, and the crew is desperate for a king, because that guy in the group is ridiculously ambitious. Until the masked one snaps, "That's stupidity," and we scramble back. He shot back to where the princess was going hard in training, then she snapped a direct attack straight at him. And a mannequin, then the attack hits, and he snaps everything into place, lining up the little. That little black girl crashes into the forest and obliterates everything in one brutal hit. Then Eros starts laughing, like he's about to say the rest. It was nothing like what he'd seen before. Then the princess opened her mouth and started saying. Right then, the adventurer steps in and blurts out that she wants to train with Ero. Ero, the slave girl, halts at the top, right when Emu blurts that she wants to fight too. Then Ero freezes in confusion, insisting she can't control the thing that's different from everyone else, and she can't rein in the black voice that some others have. So now she starts spilling the whole thing. Eros finally blurts out, "What was that?" And it feels like there's a real reason behind it. A chilling black voice belonged to a homunculus, and it sent shivers down your spine. Honestly, Eros has no clue what they're even saying, but the moment he starts to think, something clicks. So he turns to the girl and demands she hit him with everything she's got, until she's like, that was seriously dangerous as hell, and it could have gone wrong so fast. The girl strides right up to him, then the tears start pouring down her face. She kept begging them to fire arrows at him, and right after that, the arrows started coming harder and harder. Irritation kept rising as he snapped, "Say that kind of thing again." He says it can't happen to a girl like that, so trust him. Leave everything with him right now and soon. Right when it finally clicks for her, the goddess shows up out of nowhere, swearing she'd stick with everyone at that hour to guard the people no one even knew. And the goddess's identity stayed a secret until that moment. At that exact moment, Eros snapped, "So what happens in my case?" God says it honestly feels like a catastrophe right after all that, with her only soon after. For a long stretch of time, then they're thrown into a fight with those two, staying close while the goddess gets ready to unleash whatever she's about to prepare. Right there, for that exact moment, everything hangs in the balance, and then Eros pushes forward. And the goddess snaps her shoes on. Right in the middle of it, Eros ends up stepping in and defending the girl's attacks. And then he's suddenly trapped in a one-man storm, defending wave after wave, until it finally. At that exact moment, the goddess snaps out the words, "Ata." The attack was moments away, but the girl's scream of power to the goddess hit like thunder. Then she swore she was in perfect shape. Power suddenly surges out of her, and at that very moment, multiple eyes flare open, shouting that they're dealing with awful humans. Then Ero realizes the black voice she'd been hearing earlier was coming from them. The goddess starts to vanish, blurting out that they got separated and that it's over. It doesn't even feel stronger anymore, so we should end it right there. With that, it all kicked off at once. Tyros charged straight into the fray, racing toward the mysterious creature's next strike. And he starts spitting out the truth: humans are something rotten, and he can't get rid of that creature because it's stronger than anything he's ever faced. That it was all finally going to be hers. And that's how Eros ends up slashing it tore itself right down the middle. She starts to fade out, snapping that she'll never forgive Eros. Then right after, the girl jolts upright and demands an answer like, "Wait, are you saying you?" Something happens and Ero tells her, "Don't worry, you're in good hands now," because everything finally falls into place like it's perfect. The girl can't even process it. She's staring in disbelief, convinced she just heard a strange voice. A voice she once heard is gone for good. Then the goddess shows up and promises everything's perfect now, and the other girl blurts, "So who is God?" And she drops in the scores with cold calm, and you can tell everything's exactly where it should be, perfect. She starts doubting it all, and now she's shouting that she wants to fight Eros. That's when the goddess bursts into laughter and goes, saying, "Eros, maybe the time has finally come. We need to start an investigation with the family nearby." Because what was about to hit him felt seriously bad. So right then, Eros starts racing through his mind, trying to figure out what would happen next, and vows he'll do whatever it takes until the goddess finally plants a kiss on his cheek. And that leaves everyone asking the same burning question, who is that woman? And right away he drops the bomb. He says the goddess, and she can barely even believe it. You've got to believe it, this was the goddess of tales, and the stories say the goddess. A goddess forged the world, and the very rules it runs on, so everything could function with perfect attention. And once she came into her own, she started using those powers to command the laws of reality. Soon people realized the god was here, and that Eros knew the goddess too, then everything spiraled from there. That's how he becomes a god. Ero insists none of this could have happened, so he grabs the girl and tells her to get ready, because now they can push forward to something even better. Fight, then it hits them. Everything felt like a dream until the girl snaps into attack mode, realizes in that instant her power is finally being used right, and soon after, Ero says. He spoke, and right then he started rewriting all of her powers, boosting her strength piece by piece, until she could finally face the fight calmly, believing nothing bad would happen to the girl, and then a full week passed. Then it hit like a wave. Everything was about to spiral fast, the problems exploding bigger and uglier, and Ero just knew it wasn't only abuse anymore. It was going to get worse fast. Something unspeakably terrible is coming. Nobody can wrap their head around what's happening inside that cell. Salvation Army, those guys were ruthless, digging into every single detail and keeping everything under tight control through the. Over the past week, I swear to you, there wasn't a single doubt, not even for a second. Right then there was zero connection, no anchor at all to link any hope of salvation to that state. Then he spotted what they were really doing, how that family was stacking slaves on top of slaves, crushing people into submission. So that's why they kept kidnapping women too, because it was all too easy for them. At that moment, Ero finally sensed who the man behind all this really was. Then night fell, and they started hearing women's screams cutting through the darkness. Night falls, and Imu the girl starts sobbing, screaming no. Because at that exact moment she has no choice. The man who cared looks like he's been suffering all day and every night, and in that same breath Ero blurts that it was all. It was okay that she didn't have to drag her memory back. She even told him, it's fine if Ero's. He won't force her to do a thing, so maybe remembering is the better move, telling every last detail. And then she watched new women get brought in for a while, and there it was, the hard truth. People were terrified that the Salvation Friend in the High might be teaming up to kidnap women, and the suspicion was loud, real, and everywhere. For control, and it looks like they've been crushing the suppression of the. Things at home were getting way worse. There was no way to rely on everything they had because everyone depended on someone else, and then the enemy's power. It was absolutely intense. Every single person pushed their training to the max, grinding their abilities non-stop, and even used cheat code-style manipulation to crank everyone's strength higher and higher. So you make sure you can handle it until Imu finally says Ero was incredible. Then the leader snaps, all right, start prepping even harder, and Eros grins. It was all pure coincidence, and that's it. Still, he's got a shot, and that means one nasty brawl is coming, so they push out to the outside of. And the family stood guarded. Two warriors were ready to jump in at the first sign of trouble, and they were saying. They insisted even the guards got this, so don't sweat it, and definitely not about any arrows. He was a total legend around here, couldn't care less how many people fell, because nothing mattered until the adventurer finally showed up and wiped out the two guards in one go. But she insists it's fine, and that's exactly when they start freaking out over what's really going on. Then she kicks things off by beginning to talk. Begins to unleash energy, then an insane ice cascade crashes down. They scramble to ask what's going on, but the girl just cuts the power off like nothing ever happened. Nothing had happened until she snapped that she was insanely strong, and then went even further, saying Eros can't even rule. Rule it like that, he trained hard enough to back it up, and right then she was Eros' opponent. They start to believe it's finally real, until the robot drops in, already geared up and charges to fight. At that exact moment, he blurts out his name, then declares he's there to stop the thieves who are stealing what keeps people alive, and adds that he's with Eros too. The knight's courage crumbles fast as they realize what's going on, and then the other. Another adventurer shows up beside the princess, and she's like, we've got way more in common than you think. Then the investigation hits, revealing that every high-class adventurer is connected somehow. Classification princess, normally it's a breeze until that moment when the robot suddenly speaks up. Now, they've been prepping like crazy and the guys from the Salvation League step in fast. No one's getting through, not until everything's locked down. Right up until the robot finally confirms it. Then he flips the switch and slams into combat mode. The guy stares at what's right in front of him, totally baffled. Then the robot snaps into combat mode in the blink of an eye. And he launches into it, saying his power's too much to handle. And then he reveals the stone Eros gave him was something crazy. Way too powerful, and now the knight finally realizes. He didn't just defeat a giant, he crushed one with the same kind of gem too, and that's when everything clicks. And now he's bragging that he's got the red gemstone, and Eros has two more. Right then I'm thinking, okay, this is finally looking promising because yeah, that stone is insanely powerful. And then he lunges at the guard and it all. They launch a crushing attack, crash to the ground, and then another arm rockets in, boom. And they both drop out cold right in the middle of that device, while Eros hears everything and shouts, telling them to stay calm because that's the perfect plan to take it on. That guard called attention right now, while Eros does everything. Then out of nowhere, the guards finally clock what's going on, asking to rip off every rearview mirror the second he could. Right when Arrow looks like he's losing his mind in full panic, he'll inf. He lunges in at that hour when his fingers grip the wall, a defense magic snaps to life, the slave girl. Emu confirms it's true. Arrow cuts in saying he dosin. He won't stop, he'll shatter that the moment he can, so don't let it slide. They said it was impossible, but this time, the members made it happen anyway. So he slams his own power 4 times, then hurls everything full force into the wall until it explodes into millions of tiny pieces, and the girl starts freezing, shocked by what she just saw, trying to understand it all. Seeing the arrows get obliterated, he snaps, "That's not a problem." And then he tore through the place, smashing houses and ripping up multiple floors, so close to going for the mansion all at once. Because Arrow swore he wouldn't drag any innocent soul into this, and that was fine, until she said it was fine too, or at least that's what supposedly sounded like. The only people calling those places home were the Salvation Army, right there, behind those battered walls. Because it was all right and she blurts out, "Why are you doing that?" He answers, "There's always." Was pure nonsense, and now they've got to rush to the mansion to handle it, until that exact moment when Dudley shows up. After all these years, he blurts that he's been waiting forever for this exact moment. Like after billions of years, fate finally brought them back to the same place. Millions of years later, he says it right then. The second he went all out to take down Eros heard the news. Dudley had shown up in that exact moment, and it was way beyond anything he ever thought would happen. He'd show up in a place like that, just as Eros said he kept doing, always bursting with energy, while Dudley insisted it was obvious how hyped he was. Because he refuses to let something like that slide, he's determined to take down Eros himself, and Eros only shot back, "I'm way too busy at." The slave girl blurts out, "Who's that guy?" and Eros snaps back, "It's a..." She's a man from way back, and right then Dudley can't wrap his head around it. How on earth is a cute girl with arrows suddenly standing there? Then he blurts what happened to the princess, and before he can even finish, an arrow points out she'd been cooperating the whole time, while Dudley wouldn't let anyone hear it, until right then 2 guards finally show up. He showed up and demanded they take everyone at once. Then boom, they clocked him, and right in the middle of it all, the distraction operation flat out failed. Things were already falling apart, and now it kept getting worse and worse. Arrows still grips this sword with everything he's got, and then it all ends up in rushing straight at the guards without holding back, who in their right mind would. At that hour, Dudley stormed toward the guards and barked, "Don't interfere with this battle." And then he advanced until Dudley barrels into the 2 guards and they can't even process why he'd snap like that. Eros is shocked too, until the guards go down and Dudley pops back up, demanding Halhair fight next, so it's on they could be. Dudley crashes in with that immense power, unleashing it all at once. Eros can't even deny it, calling it incredible. Then Dudley smirks and insists that power is perfect for crushing Eros for good. Eros' sheer strength was off the charts, because his power was being cranked up by a cheat operation, and it felt like a brutal surge of power caused by one terrible game-breaking turn. Mobility, because he only had half of 20 to work with. At 20%, that's exactly what he figured out. This technique kept leveling up, getting stronger with every step, and normally at 18 years old you unlock a power so rare, almost nobody ever gets to see it. Some abilities come with extra criteria nobody understands, and getting just a second one is an uphill battle. Dudley's second ability was already sick on its own, until Dudley actually admitted he was starting to feel impressed. Then Eros's 2 stones ripped through the air, saying they had it completed, and that's when he stares at that screen, and the thought won't stop firing in his head about what it could have happened. Maybe it's a gift straight from the goddess, until they finally got their own hands on it. But he kept stacking new abilities one after another, and he had teleport with that ability. Arrow blurts out, "That was insanely powerful," because just imagining what could have happened sends chills down his spine. He clocks it 5 meters of pure radiance, and realizes it won't jump up anytime soon because he has to train the ability first, the one that lets him create more. It was another power ripped from that red stone, and it started popping up all over the place. So they better grab it right now. Honestly, those arrows can't wait. Dudley can't shake the feeling that something like this shouldn't be happening, and if they have been credible, then Eros is being way too quiet, like he's terrified of just how much power he's got. Then the girl tells him, defeat Eros and you can come with Dudley, but Dudley snaps, getting irritated and saying, that could never happen. He refused to feel like he was being cheated. Then Eros snapped, fine, I'll test the new powers I just unlocked. Dudley surged toward. I'll close in on Dudley, strike immediately, until that exact moment. Enro drops the line that he'll fly, and the next second he leaps so high he actually takes off, like there's almost no limits left. Right then, Dudley leaned in and demanded to know how Eros was even soaring through the sky. That was a total cheat, Eros. I'm there right at that moment. And then Eros says, saying he wouldn't reveal his next move. And right then, he teleports behind Dudley and slams into him with everything he's got, sending the boy flying away instantly. At that moment, the fight snaps into view, and everyone realizes it's going down. It was over for good until that very second when he can't help wondering who that person really was. Enro admits he's not sure what they can even do next, and right there, everything changed because they claim they could seize control of the house in seconds, if only the power limit hadn't slammed the brakes. He tries to rein in the powers blazing around him. There are way too many, and he's left staring at the chaos, wondering what he should do right up until people suddenly appear and Enro throws it off with a calm grin, no problem at all. That he'll deal with them right now. Then he blurts out the G fast, and right when everyone finally spots Enro's in the room. Says anyone can come up to him because he won't hand it all over at once. Months pass, then Enro suddenly starts hauling the girl along to activate everything, and the instant it's done, he blasts into the air and flies like crazy, and the girl can't help but wonder, why on earth does he do it like that? That's when he lunges in and grabs the girl before she can fall, and in that split second she stays right behind Iroha while he blurts. He says, stop doing this like that, because nobody can even figure out how they were flying in the first place, and then the power was unreal, an illusion ability so wild it made reality feel like a lie. A weird illusion, maybe hypnosis. They couldn't drop their guard at all until Enro said. In that split second, he starts scrambling in his head, trying to figure out exactly what he can do next. He crafts the cheat code operator, then unleashes all his fire attributes. Boom, he lights everything up and obliterates it. Fire at once. Right then he finally blurts, everything's ready. Now there are 3 evil presences were trapped inside, and 2 of them radiated terrifying power. Then the third revealed itself as something even worse. Everyone was too busy with their own problems, so Eros had to strike now and hit them all before they could even react. Right then, he had to be exactly what they needed, perfect timing for them to step in. Eros shouts that he's got even more days of defenses on glass, so he cranks up his power, smashes the glass right then, and everything rushes in, and those 2 guards immediately step in front of the family leader. They swear they'll defend him with every breath and surge in right then, and Eros clocks their move as something way beyond normal. Before long, the guards already recognize Eros, admit he's caused Salvation headaches, but insist that from this moment on, things will change. Eros says the Salvation group. The group keeps on with the terror, not just in one corner of the region. Then it hits hard, and everyone's demanding those people get arrested immediately. So he finally blurts to the family leader, I should go with the rest. But then he realizes he's trapped. The family leader flat out refuses, then orders the guards to handle it, because that's not the kind of move worth making. Right up until that second, Emu still stood with Eros, and the fat man can't wrap his head around it, blurting, so you're telling me it was in. He tried to strike Eros right away, but the girl didn't go along with it, absolute shock, because somehow he'd managed to shatter every black shadow inside her. Emu declares she believes straight from her heart. Believes it's true, so she snaps that the orders don't work on her anymore, and the fat man finally gets. He snaps in full fury, shouting that this wasn't any excuse at all. What happened was truly awful, and then he hammers home that she's an artificial girl. Mara snaps back that he'd never spout garbage like that. Then, as soon as he insists everything's fine, the girl blurted out and just trails off. She feels the difference, like she's the natural one, and she can't help thinking it's because she was a slave. Then Eros shows up to save her, and somehow that makes her feel human again. At that hour she taps into her power and realizes, holy hell, she's insanely strong, like she's basically human, then grips her 2 daggers and feels it all hit at once. Her strength way too powerful to ignore. The guards mutter that doesn't look good, snatch the stones, and ready themselves for the moment. Then boom, a teleport rips open, and at that hour Leon suddenly appears, leaving Eros furious because he could. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and his reaction screamed that it already went down the worst way possible. read a bed, raging like he'd explode, and Iro told him to handle it the right way because this was truly awful. Then right away, he asked what happened to Dudley because they weren't together anymore. So yeah, it turns out they were always a total mess. Then they slipped into the Salvation group, and he boldly said he wants to get stronger on his own, not like everyone else, so it looks like he's been handling it all. Then it hits he's stuck with all of it alone, and that's when Arrows gets. He instantly gets worked up, and Leon finally draws his sword, pushing it to grow stronger as he rips into him, saying this power was never some graceful way to beat Eros. Then it hits. He's forced to face everything he did to his family, while Leon tells Eros to come at him, forward with everything he's got. Emu blasts that kind of future can't happen. This is a fight with way too much at stake, so Eros snaps back, then push forward with everything, and sprints in with brutal power until Eros slips away in his third form, then turns the tables, dodging just long enough to strike back hard and leave Leon hanging with real openings. Until that moment, he couldn't even process what was happening with those ancestral techniques. Then boom, they stripped him of his place in the family. He'd always been blessed by so many people and always. Arrow finally cracks what's going on and then everything falls apart. Turns out that you can measure your own thoughts was a total lie. Arrow even says he won't use a single power because he doesn't need to, because right then he's stronger than everyone. Leon even calls it impossible, until everything starts happening at once and the girl Emu is out there. With the security sweeping in all at once, she keeps the pressure on until she finally smiles and says everything's perfect. Then she drops her real request to the group leader to take away. She finally slips from his control, now she refuses to serve him. The leader can't believe what he's hearing until the girl asks, "Isn't that possible?" She grins and says it's fine, she can follow any form so under. Knowing how wild that situation gets, the guards warn, don't underestimate them, they're strong too. And he remembers exactly how to take down that girl. The girl shoots back that she can fight too, and right then Leon lunges at the protagonist, but even he can't pull it off. Eros finally snaps things into place, gets him to follow every opening, and the moment the chance shows up, he strikes at one. He stumbles out, then crashes into Leon, and Leon looks far too weak. As he falls, he blurts, "That's impossible." He's built to be the strongest, but stopping him isn't happening, because he'll never reach that status. That moment no one else can ever match, and no one compares to him, no one. Iro snaps that kind of thought is downright terrifying, and warns that letting it take root can lead straight down a dark path. Leave Holy should be a guy who was there to deliver my radio to humanity, and shower us with protections to the. In the royal capital's prisons, he'd bide his time, then he'd turn that moment into a reflection of his own strike. Leon snaps, saying it's impossible, no way that can happen, and then he fires off questions. Why isn't he the holy swordsman, and who could be if not him? When the answer still won't make sense, Leon rises, storms forward at Eros, and bam, one brutal, powerful attack detonates. Right then, Emu tore into the two security guards, both of them charged her at once, but they never got the chance to let the girl swing first. Saros shows up out of nowhere, tells her not to quit, because victory is still on the table, and her power surges back into her. Eros had hinted about this power before, and he was right. Everything was finally set so they could slip through together until she felt. She pushed forward and got stronger by the second, until that exact moment when even the guards didn't see what was coming. The guard declared it couldn't be true, a total lie, while the family leader got pinned in that moment, saying he'd hand over one of his treasures if they knew who he was, and it was about to get brutal fast. Soon, he demanded where the other members were supposed to be to defend the family's freedom, but the truth hit hard. Everyone was already getting crushed, and then it vanished, leaving behind the shock that several things had already happened. The family leader can't believe Princess is really there. He stares in shock and demands to know why she even showed up. So the princess snaps that she doesn't need to spell anything out right now. Then they seize the mansion, and suddenly nobody's left to guard the family's leader, who can't even wrap his head around what's happening. So tell me, why do people keep calling him that? He was teaming up with the Salvation Group, and he even thought piling up relationships with multiple women was the move, so that's why he wanted to stick with them. What a disastrous idea to just toss money at them and call it a plan. The man swears he knows that kind of promise will never be broken again. Then the princess. They start grilling him, asking why his brother is getting hit with problem after problem, and it all points back to that guy, so they press harder, "Why are you even teaming up with us?" But the guy just. She's totally clueless about what she's even saying. Seriously, it's obvious. No way that was happening, definitely not. So now Eros is basically implying the leader had no clue what was happening, or that everything was somehow fine. And the truth is, Eros didn't understand either. He can't quite put his finger on it, but something feels asterisk off asterisk, and before long they're already asking Arrow. Arrows blurted, "What is happening?" and hurled a fireball straight into empty air. Then he saw it. A mage was invisible right there beside him. Another guy had just stepped in that form, and right then Arrows demanded, "So what's this guy's salvation?" He swore he never thought something like that could happen, and then right after. Only someone who dares to speak right then, and it has to be perfect.